Alright, let me show you a story about a kid who awakened a power everyone thought was absolute trash. What they didn't know was this ability had limitless potential. Our main character, Jong Sang-woo, just got the power to clone himself. And for a chubby gamer like him, what good could that possibly do? Absolutely nothing, so the protagonist just heads back home to his job, playing a popular game. But curious about his new power, Sang-woo decides he has to test it out. He focuses, and bam, a clone pops right out, much to his surprise. And it comes out completely naked, giving him a pretty good look at how everything is hidden under all that extra weight. Look, touching another dude is weird. But hey, it's his own body, so whatever. He orders the clone to get dressed. Time to see if this thing can actually follow his commands. Sang-woo makes the clone kneel and stand up a few times, just as a test. And just like him, the little fatty is out of breath after only 5 reps. Yep, a weak clone is useless, but then a system window appears. It says his vitality just went up by 0.01. Now, fast forward 1 month. This is Sang-woo's body now. He was running so much that regulars at the park were starting to think the guy was seriously unhinged. But here's the crazy part. The real Sang-woo, he was chilling at home. In just 30 days, he lost 20 kilos. He'd figured out some insane things about his power. For one, the clone's pain and exhaustion. He doesn't feel any of it. If a clone pushes itself so hard that it dies, it just vanishes into thin air. But the best part, he gets all the positive effects. All the stats, all the gains, and his clones always look just like his new, improved body. He can also command them telepathically, like a private army. His slave number 1 is out for a run when he's suddenly ordered to stop and bust out some push-ups. And finally, clones can't make more clones. If they could, the planet would probably be drowning in billions of them. Sang-woo forced his clone to train for a whole month straight, with 0 breaks. But a guy can't just live on training. He was burning through his cash. Sang-woo needed a job, and he needed it fast. So he decides to get a job and take his clone with him to earn double the salary. His clone, number 1, will pretend to be a normal guy named Gongo. As luck would have it, one of the guys there is an old acquaintance. Sang-woo just plays it cool, saying he brought a friend along to work. The acquaintance, Diakal, just tells them to go check in at the main building. Sang-woo is nervous. This is his first time pulling a stunt like this. Is it even a crime? I mean, if he's doing double the work, he deserves double the pay. It's only fair. A few hours later, our boy was getting a harsh lesson in manual labor. His clone, on the other hand, was grinding like an absolute machine. Okay, but here's the problem he didn't think about. The clone literally works itself to death. That damn thing just won't stop, even when it's totally exhausted. If it just pops and dies in front of everyone, he won't get paid. By the end of the day, Sang-woo was the one feeling like he was about to collapse. His clone was probably wondering if it would get to be the original now. Mr. Diakal brings the boys a drink, super impressed by their hard work. He was amazed to see such dedicated young men, but the truth was, Sang-woo wouldn't even be there. Let's see how our boy plans to keep his bank account from hitting 0. The man asks which university our protagonist goes to. And when he hears it's Gyeonggo Guk, Mr. Diachal is even more impressed. He sighs. Wishing his own daughter was as smart as Sang-woo, maybe she could get into a top-tier school like that too. Our protagonist just brushes it off, saying it's not that hard really. Just a little bit of studying and she'll get in, and with that, the man offers him a new job. Become his daughter's tutor and cram knowledge into her head, no matter what it takes. Diakchil even offers a huge salary for it. Of course, a good father will do anything for his child's future. The next day, Sang-woo woke up feeling the full body ache from actually working. If the clones feel like this, he thinks, maybe I should take it a little easier on them. He mentally orders clone number 1 to come home. It can't work for more than 24 hours straight without raising suspicion. Now that he'd cut his clone some slack, it was time to relax and grab a bite to eat. After a while, the clone finally returned. Sang-woo immediately ordered it to take a shower. It had more work to do. With Clone 1 all cleaned up, Sang-woo decides to try an experiment. Now pay attention, because this is where his plan gets really interesting. He plans to prick the clone's finger. See, in this world, people can awaken special abilities, one of which is regeneration. So if he injures the body over and over, letting it heal each time, he might just awaken a high-level regeneration skill. Of course, doing that to himself would be absolute torture. The solution: just hurt the clones instead. Sang-woo gives a new phone to Clone 1. From now on, it has to answer his calls, and while it's at home, it has to be exercising nonstop. Sang-woo heads out to upgrade his own training regimen and decides to join a gym. Just then, an acquaintance spots him and says he barely recognized him, joking that he's lost half his body weight. Our protagonist just says he's got a new lifestyle now and is actually on his way to sign up for a gym. His buddy calls it a massive coincidence. He's also heading to a new gym right now because he heard there's a super hot instructor working there. He drags Sang-woo along to go check it out. The protagonist signs up and does the initial tests. But his real plan is to send his clone here to work out like a beast every single day. His so-called friend is the type of guy who screams while lifting and absolutely loves being the center of attention. I'm sure you know the type. This guy's awakened ability is strength, so he's naturally powerful with a 2.1 strength stat. While Sang-woo was figuring out the machines, his real friend Deokchil called to see if he was okay and if he could come over for the first tutoring session with his treasure. Sang-woo immediately heads to the man's house after leaving the gym. By the way, that sleazy friend didn't even end up joining. Surprise, surprise, there was no hot female instructor there after all. Sang-woo thinks to himself that he got lucky. Now he doesn't have to worry about that idiot bothering his clone. When he gets to Deokchil's house, the noise inside is absolutely blasting. And when the man suddenly throws the door open, the pain gets cranked up pretty high, too. Well, at least our protagonist just found out what Deokchil's daughter looks like. And let's just say, she really is a treasure. Sang scratches his head, staring ahead, lost in thought. Mr. Deokchil is extremely worried, apologizing over and over for the door incident. A caring hand places on the table a small plate of sliced apples. It's Deoshil's wife. She says she can barely recognize our guy because of his weight loss. And he just explains he's been working out like crazy since they last saw him. As he cleans his mouth with a napkin, he glances over at the girl. Miss Han looks a little tense, her hands resting nervously on her knees. She's blushing, looking at the floor, but she snaps to attention when her name is called. As Sang introduces himself, the ecstatic parents see her all meek and blushing, and immediately assume she's got a crush on the boy. Hee-in is dying of embarrassment, thinking Sang must have heard her yelling just moments before. Our protagonist confirms she's in her third year and asks to check her grades before they officially start the lesson. And you should see her face, she looks like she's just seen a ghost. Sang holds her report card, trying his best not to look disappointed. Her grades are not good, not at all. We're talking 6s and 7s max. The parents are completely speechless, while the girl is so embarrassed she doesn't even know where to look. Dad slowly gets up, quietly grabbing his things, still wearing that same dumbfounded expression on his face. Then he just shouts that he's leaving for work, basically abandoning his wife to deal with the mess. Sang finally stops staring at the report card and looks back at the girl. She's looking down, totally discouraged, with a face like a lost puppy. With a reassuring smile, he tells her it's no problem at all. His grades weren't great either, and he knows a ton of tips and tricks to help. The girl's face completely lights up, and she clasps her hands together, full of hope. Our protagonist says they'll both do their best to hit their goal, and they agree to have tutoring sessions 2 times a week. Back at Sang's place, we get a shot of his apartment building. He walks into his humble home, thinking he still has such a long way to go. He remembers his tutoring sessions with the girl as the scenes flash by. Hien is actually a very dedicated and hardworking student, and she takes all of her tutor's advice to heart. As he hangs up his coat, he thinks how lucky it is that she's smarter than he expected. Okay, and this is where our main character's real problems start to kick in. He sits down at his computer and realizes number one must have already left for work. For now, he's given his clone a cell phone. But he knows if the number of clones keeps growing, trying to manage a bunch of phones is gonna be a huge pain. Sang starts browsing a site called Hunter Web. It's got dungeon tips, party finders, skill info, and a marketplace for buying and selling gear. His goal is simple: find a skill on Hunter Web that's related to his own. He sees all kinds of ads, people looking for skills, scrolls for sale. And then, in total shock, he does a spit take when he sees a skill being sold for 100 million. Another telepathic skill is also up for sale for the low price of 400 million. He can't help it, the tears just start streaming down his face. The boy thinks that if he had that kind of money, he would much rather buy a house than a single skill. Leaning his head back in his chair, he lets out a hopeless sigh. For him, it will take forever to save up that much cash for a skill. He starts wondering if hunters really make that much money. He pulls up his bank account on his phone and yup, it is painfully empty. Throwing himself under the bed in disgust, the guy feels like he just wants the world to explode. But trust me, an intrusive thought is about to creep in. He's wondering if he should become a hunter as articles flash across his screen. All of them showing off their magnificent skills. He stands up, lost in thought. Not quite sure what to do next, Sang realizes his cloning ability is way too good to just be wasted on manual labor. He grabs his coat with a new fire in his eyes. The determined kid has a brand new plan. He gets dressed, ready to make his move. He's going to try becoming a hunter right now. His vitality stat even increases. Back in the 2000s, portals ripped open and monsters poured out. More than half the population was wiped out. It really looked like the end for humanity. But then, in the middle of all that chaos, superpowered humans started to appear. And with them fighting on the front lines, humanity actually won. Now in 2023, there are people who hunt down the last of the monsters. These are the hunters. Sang is now watching an online course on how to get his license and join them. He jots down some notes on passing the hunter exam and heads for the Hunter Association. As he stretches, he notices that since he started training his vitality, he feels so much better, even though he's barely sleeping these days. He steps inside the association, making his way through the massive building. A masked man with a huge sword on his back talks to a weapons dealer. Another guy, bald and covered in scars, is busy cleaning a massive firearm. And trust me, you can just feel the tension. A shady old man in a big hat is just waiting. Sang is blown away by all the strange and powerful people he sees around him. He also notices there aren't many people here to actually take the test. A woman in uniform announces that registration is closing in 20 minutes. He knows he's gotta get to the basement, but the whole situation is seriously starting to freak him out. He finally arrives at a door with a sign that reads, Hunter License Test Room. With a shaky voice, our hero opens the door and says, "Excuse me." And what he sees inside, every single person is either terrifying or just plain weird. Absolutely no exceptions. Sweating bullets, he stands there wondering why there are so many people packed in this room. Two sinister guys just start laughing at him for being so polite, like he's some kind of idiot. Suddenly, the sound of heavy army boots echoes as someone approaches. A scarred hand grips the table with intense force. This man is Han Mongan, a C-class hunter, and he's the proctor for today's test. Pay attention to this part. The exam has a written portion, a practical test, and an aptitude test. Cheating is forbidden, and he makes it clear they never forget a cheater's face. The two guys who were just laughing at Sang immediately shut up, terrified. Our protagonist is feeling the pressure too. This is on a whole other level. Looking out at the nervous crowd, the instructor announces the test will now begin. Meanwhile, a car cruises down the street. Traffic is moving just fine, no real congestion in sight. The person on the other end of a headset says they'll get the money deposited by the end of the month. The driver on the headset tells his boss to chill out because he's a pro at this. But his boss just screams into the headset, nearly blowing the poor guy's eardrum out. The driver's name is Kong, and he works for the JM agency. He knows his boss is about to kill him. He complains that no money is coming in, but everyone wants a piece of it. He glances at his watch, 15 minutes to 8. The hunter's exam is almost done. He's driving across a bridge, the setting sun bathing the entire scene in a warm glow. An arm lifts, a bracelet glows, and a status screen pops into view with a single word. Passed, and that's our main character, Sang. Stick with me because his easy life is about to end. He can't believe it. Sure, everyone said the test was simple, but he never imagined that it would be this easy. The written questions were a breeze, just memorizing facts. For the practical exam, they gave everyone plenty of training time. And the target, it was practically right in front of you. The aptitude test felt more like a basic ethics quiz, asking if he'd ever even considered shooting someone. Sang starts to wonder if a test this simple is really okay for a job that's all about taking huge risks and handling dangerous weapons. Walking home, he's completely lost in thought. He glances to the side, up at a massive skyscraper, and a thought crosses his mind. It really seems like the government is desperate for them to do this. But he sighs, deciding it's best not to dwell on it. Suddenly, he runs into a group of people where men in slick suits are handing out business cards. These guys look sharp, perfectly dressed, well-groomed, with practiced smiles on their faces. They warmly offer the cards to everyone passing. Sang figures they must be recruiters from the guilds scouting for new hunters, and just like that, one of them approaches him. He offers Sang a card and congratulates him on passing the exam. The card is from the JM agency, with the name Seo Kang Jun Mo printed on it. He introduces himself, saying whenever Sang needs to buy an item or find a monster to hunt, their agency can help out for a small fee. A little awkwardly, our main character just scratches his neck and thanks him. Then he pulls up his status screen, and trust me, this is where things get interesting. His cloning skill has leveled up. It's at level 2 now, while Jun Mo is still talking. Sang just bolts, shouting that he'll call them some other time. The poor guy is left standing there, just whispering for him not to forget to call. Back at his apartment complex, Sang practically flies in from the street. He covers his face with his hand, trying to hold back his excitement. The boy is absolutely euphoric because now he can make 2 clones at the same time. His new clone materializes. Just like the first one, it appears in a puff of smoke, and just like that, there are 3 Sangs. I know what you're thinking, this changes everything. He welcomes clone number 2. Holding up the JM agency card, he declares that they are all finally ready to become hunters. Meanwhile, Jun Mo tosses his leftover cards onto the car seat. He's finally handed out pretty much all of them. Adjusting his tie, he hopes for some calls soon. He glances thoughtfully at his reflection in the window, staring out into the night. We cut to a massive building, the Hong Guild headquarters, Korea's #1 guild. A document with highlighted info is sitting on a desk as a man sips from a mug. He says they need to process the payment according to what's on the list. Jun Mo takes the document, agreeing, but as he scans it more closely, something worries him, something feels off. In the total payment section, the prices are listed for slime fluid, horned rabbit horn, and troll fluid. He's sweating now, holding the paper, confused. He starts to ask a question. He points out that the amount looks strange, but before he can finish his sentence, the other man cuts him off, calling him Jun Mo that mocking look. Trust me, we just found a bad guy. The guy asks if it's been a while since Jun Mo joined, and he confirms it has. And here's where you and I see the shady side of this business. His boss claims he needs to be sharper, which puts Junmo on edge. He says if they do everything by the book, there's no real profit left for them. He claps a hand on his shoulder, admitting he knows Junmo is an upright guy, but then says they can't be so sensitive about the guild's shadier services. Junmo is furious, crumpling the paper in his fist, but his boss just smirks. He mockingly asks again if Junmo understands what he's being told. Later in his car, Junmo mutters that he really should have just kept his mouth shut. Just then, a ringtone starts blaring from his suit pocket. He quickly grabs his phone and answers, identifying himself as Kang Junmo. On the other end of the line is Jong Sang-woo, who says there's something to discuss. Night has fallen, and we cut to the outside of a shopping complex. We see a cafe called Starlux, and Junmo heads inside, looking for his appointment. Sang is already sitting at a table nearby and gives him a friendly wave. As he walks in, Junmo apologizes for the wait, but Sang brushes it off. He explains he just got there himself, then asks about getting some drinks. A cafe employee waits by the register, and Sang says yes, he'd like one. They end up ordering an iced coffee that looks absolutely delicious. Junmo gets down to business, asking if Sang wants a safe hunt, a beginner-level one. Sang confirms he does, so Junmo asks the most important question, what's his skill? Now pay attention because this is where everything changes. Our protagonist says, it's cloning. Junmo pauses, thinking he's heard of this skill before, one that creates illusions. As Sang chugs his entire coffee in one gulp, Junmo continues to analyze him. You and I can already guess this is no cheap trick, but Junmo is thinking otherwise. He figures a rookie who makes illusions would be pretty useless in a physical hunt. But he still calls it a good skill and hands over the contract for him to read. The first hunt he recommends is in the slime territory. They aren't dangerous, but there's a catch. When you kill them, they release a toxic gas, so masks are absolutely necessary. Sang simply uses his phone to snap a picture of the contract, calling it a piece of cake. The second option would be in the horned rabbit area. It's possible to hunt there for a long time, but they're tough to catch, making it hard to earn much. There are other low-class monsters like giant rats, but he wouldn't recommend them. The two he mentioned are the only ones where he can guarantee Sang's safety. Our protagonist thinks both places sound pretty cool, and he likes the prices too. He's calculating what he'll get for the items he can collect from the monsters. And so, Sang announces he would like to proceed with that exact contract. With a friendly smile, Junmo thanks the new hunter and asks which one he's decided on. But then, with a decisive and almost cocky move, another hand stamps the paper. The sudden move completely startles poor Junmo, who wasn't expecting that at all. And in that instant, he realizes he's not dealing with a simple copy of the person. He lifts the stamp from the paper to find a perfect signature in red ink. Stunned, Junmo looks up at the person who just stamped the contract. And now, with two Sangs present, they both declare, when we said we liked both locations. We meant we're doing both. You and I just saw a rookie flip the script on a veteran. All right, let's start with a flashback. Junmo is talking to a guy whose ability is supposedly cloning. The man looks like some kind of masked ninja, face hidden, as he confirms the rumor. Junmo asks for a demonstration, and the ninja prepares to show off his cloning technique. What happens next absolutely blows his mind. The swordsman puts his blade away. Then several clones of him materialize and sheath their own swords, a perfect replica. They surround him, all in a battle stance, ready to strike, but Junmo feels it. Something is definitely wrong here, and a wave of panic hits him. The ninja's clones lunge forward, aiming their swords in a precise, deadly attack. The blades seem to pierce right through the original ninja sitting calmly in his chair. Poor Junmo can't watch, covering his face and begging them to just calm down. Eyes watering, heart pounding, he peeks again at the ninja who has been run through. But with a fake blade still in him, the man explains it's all just an illusion. Nothing is actually real. Junmo slowly reaches out to touch the sword. But his hand passes right through it. The blade can't cause any real damage. These clones are only good for drawing the attention of nearby monsters. The tension completely drains out of Junmo, and he starts laughing in sheer relief. Snapping back to the present, he remembers that moment clearly. That cloning ability was an illusion, but this time, you and I can see it's a completely different story. Sang had physically picked up the contracts with his own hands to check them. On top of that, he downed a coffee like a man dying of thirst in the desert. A worried expression creeps onto his face. This is something else entirely. He's never seen an ability quite like this before. To test a theory, he decides to ask. He carefully questions if they might be twins, a question that makes Sang just burst out laughing. Pointing at his clone, still cracking up, he says he understands the confusion. He even places a hand on the copy's shoulder, showing how solid it is. Sang explains that this guy right here is a 100% real clone. Junmo might have mistaken his power for someone else's because this clone is solid. He even adds that he has another one, but he sent that one off to the academy. Stunned, Junmo asks if the clones can also build muscle and train. The protagonist says yes. If the clone gets stronger, he gets stronger, simple as that. He can literally power level his own stats using clones. I know what you're thinking, this is completely broken. Junmo realizes this ability isn't just some F-class skill, it has gigantic potential. But getting back on track, Sang has a question for him about the hunting grounds. He wants to know if it's a problem for the same person to enter multiple hunting grounds. Junmo explains that entering at the same time is tricky. There's a system that keeps a record of every single person's entry. Seeing the grim look on the kid's face, he knows this bureaucracy is a huge problem. But the good-hearted Junmo says he'll try talking to the association about it. Scratching his head, Sang says that's fine, but there's a catch. He won't be able to use the ability again until tomorrow afternoon because of a cooldown. So Junmo suggests they meet in 2 days, right at the Hunter Center. He looks a bit suspicious as he asks about the contract now. But Sang, stamp in hand, says he already stamped it. He had already checked the percentage split from the photo number 2 sent him earlier. The man then suddenly stands up, and the abrupt movement startles poor Sang. And trust me, what happens next is wild. Extending a hand, Juno says he's looking forward to working with him, and with a 1,000-yard stare. Sang reflects on the massive step he's just taken for his future. And with that, they shake on it, sealing the deal. Now, let's see how this plays out. The clone, meanwhile, just sits there, completely unfazed as the two finalize their contract. 2 days later. We're back at the massive Hunter Center building, and our protagonist is walking down the street, cautiously scanning his surroundings. Someone shouts out for Hunter Nim, and he looks up, caught off guard. It's Junmo. He adjusts his tie, mentioning that Sang arrived early, before their scheduled time. Sang explains he rushed over just in case Junmo was already waiting. He asks if this whole complex is the association, which Junmo confirms as they grab a number. The place is huge. A voice calls out hunters one by one for their appointments. Finally, it's Sang's turn. The clerk asks if he wants to get dual access to the hunting ground. He then explains to our main character a pretty shocking fact. He's the first person since someone named Jumper to even request dual access rights. As you'd expect. This is not a normal request, and the staff starts digging through mountains of old files to find the right procedure. After a while, the employee comes back and points him to the civil service office. What they see is a mountain of paperwork that shocks both Sang and Junmo. The man says he'll handle all the documents and tells Sang to head for the skill demo room. So Junmo heads to a counter with a female attendant to start the process. He hands over that ridiculous stack of papers. Meanwhile, Sang arrives at his destination. Inside is a young woman in a lab coat standing next to a transparent chamber. He concentrates, forming that familiar cloud of energy he uses to summon clones. A new Sang materializes in front of him, a perfect, identical copy. And yup, he's completely naked. Looks like our guy forgot about that one little detail. The researcher is, understandably, more than a little embarrassed by the whole situation. Elsewhere, a technician is hard at work on the bracelet with high-precision tools. He's examining a specific component with intense focus before finally speaking. He announces that the identical ID bracelet is now complete. Now the clones can access the hunting grounds just by scanning their fingerprints. They can enter and exit at the same time. Wherever Sang goes, his clone can go too. The excited man declares, this is an unprecedented ability, not just in Korea, but in the entire world. Sang finds the guy a little too intense, grabs his clone, and tells him they're leaving. The technician is a bit bummed out, clearly thinking the clone would have made for a great test subject. Sang meets back up with Jun-mo, who's still dealing with all the paperwork. He tells him the authorization request is officially done. All the prep work for his solo hunt is complete. He and his clone are finally ready. Jun-mo asks if he's heading to the hunting ground right now, and Sang says yes. His schedule is wide open for the day, but the manager has a question. He wonders why he's hiding the clone's face with a mask. Sang explains too many people are after him. But as they're talking, they have no idea that someone is watching them. From a floor above, a man with a sinister aura flashes a malicious smile. Trust me, you're not gonna like this guy. He's the Hyong Guild master, Shin Haesung. He scratches the back of his neck, muttering that he was wondering who it was. And then he shouts Kong Jun-mo's name from the balcony, getting everyone's attention. Trust me, you're gonna want to see this entrance. A massive crash rips through the building, shocking everyone below. Then the guild leader himself leaps from the upper floor, sticking a perfect hero landing. He smirks, saying it's been a while, and that he didn't expect to see them in a place like this. Sang immediately tenses up. He looks at the man, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Shin starts to rise. He had no idea this guy was still an active hunter. Our protagonist knows exactly who this is, the guild master. He just dropped from at least a few stories up. Jun-mo's face is a mask of cold indifference, staring right at Shin. Through clenched teeth, he offers a polite greeting. This just sends the guild master into a fit of laughter. He scoffs, asking what he means by calling him sir. He looks over at Sang and asks who this kid is. Jun-mo explains he's a hunter working with their company. Shin's eyes narrow. His pupils constrict as he lets out a little sigh, sizing our guy up and down. He says he gets it, but then his gaze locks onto one particular detail. He asks Jun-mo if Sang is maybe an F rank. Our protagonist does not like that. Not one bit, his face falls, looking utterly dejected. With a shaky voice, Shin starts mocking poor Jun-mo. He says the man who used to manage C and D ranks has really fallen on hard times. And then he just howls with laughter. He can't believe Jun-mo is babysitting an F rank, especially one in a cheap sweatshirt. That comment hits a nerve. Jun-mo clenches his jaw, fighting back the urge to curse out the big shot's entire family tree. But Sang puts a hand on his shoulder, a simple gesture telling him to chill. His expression is totally calm, unfazed by the man's arrogant insults. The guild master is literally wiping away tears, laughing that hard. He puffs out his chest at Sang, saying it looks like he's got something to say. But our hero just gives him a friendly smile. Okay, this is where it gets good. Watch how he handles this. He says it's an honor to meet the country's #1 guild master. And boom, the flattery works. Shin says he doesn't have the eyes of an F rank, and that his head seems screwed on right. But with a dark glint in his eye, Sang says, "Oh, I'm not done yet, and that's not all." He adds that the guild is also #1 for its monopoly on dungeons. Shin's face absolutely beams. And Sang continues, #1 for restricting hunting grounds. And for having the absolute worst payment rates. Sang acts totally overwhelmed, saying that for someone so important to be complimenting him, he's just speechless. Shin scratches his neck. This kid's got guts, he says, clearly flattered. But then a dark energy starts radiating from him as his smile turns sinister. He puts both hands on Sang's shoulders, saying he wants to see if his skills match that courage. You and I both know this is a bad sign for our guy. And yep, he immediately starts breaking out in a nervous sweat. But just then, a guy with glasses and a bowl cut comes running in, shouting for his boss. He rushes toward Shin, who just calls the four-eyed man a total buzzkill. I guess that's all for today, he says, stepping away from Sang. With pure malice in his eyes, he asks for our protagonist's name. And here's the best part, our boy tells him to find out for himself. Shin just waves a hand, calls him a fun guy, and says goodbye to Junmo. The man with glasses starts nagging Mr. Shin, saying he shouldn't just leave. An association. Now in the car, Junmo and Sang are both silent, lost in thought. A little awkwardly, Junmo thanks our protagonist for stepping in earlier. But Sang just says he couldn't stand by and watch, he had to do something. Junmo asks if he already knew about his history with the Hyang Guild. Sang smirks, saying he's not an idiot and did some digging on the JM agency. He admits it was tough finding info, but he managed to uncover a rumor that Junmo was fired. We see screenshots of people online trashing the guild, total keyboard warriors. Sang adds there were comments calling the guild horrible, and a few insults I can't even repeat. People were warned to never join the JM agency, or they'd be targeted by the Hyang Guild. So Junmo asks, genuinely confused, why on earth he chose his agency then. And with this sly grin, Sang replies, because the pay rate was just that good. And the clone, as usual, completely silent, just staring out the car window. Besides, our hero says Junmo can count on him if he ever runs into trouble he can't handle. And you can just see how much that means to him. This is a huge show of trust. The man grips the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. He thanks him from the heart. With that, they continue on their way, cutting through the heavy city traffic. Inside a gym, some hype music is blasting to get everyone pumped for their workout. A bandaged hand, already covered in fresh bruises, trembles as it pushes through the exercise. Toned legs, shaking with sheer effort, press on with absolute determination. It's Sang's clone, so focused on his workout that he's starting to weird out the regulars. The gym instructor just bites his thumbnail, watching this absolutely insane effort. A woman walks over, asking if it's really okay for the guy to be pushing himself that hard. But the instructor just explains that he already tried to talk to him, but the clone won't listen. You can see it on his face, the poor guy looks completely exhausted, but he keeps going. He's pushing himself to the limit until a notification sound buzzes from his pocket. Gripping the bar with those injured hands, he takes a quick break to check his phone. It's a message from the original Sang Woo, telling him to finish his workout and take a shower. The instructions are clear: wait in front of the gym at 4. The clone immediately slams an energy drink in one go and ends his workout. The worried woman next to him says it looks like he's finally stopped. The instructor just sighs in relief. We cut to a dark cave, where lava slimes are crawling all over the floor. These things are everywhere on the floor, the walls even dripping from the ceiling. Gross. One of them explodes, making a loud pop and releasing some kind of strange gas. A figure in a full hazmat suit and gas mask stands there, holding a massive hammer. After smashing a slime, they point a suction hose at the leftover goo. All of it gets sucked into a container on their back, which is already nearly full of red liquid. The person in the gas mask steps through a blue portal, heading toward 2 armed guards. The helmet comes off and surprise, it's our boy Sang, letting out a deep sigh of relief. Junmo asks him how the hunt went, and Sang complains that the gas mask is super uncomfortable. Junmo explains that even though the slime hunting ground is safe, hunters avoid it. Why? Because the profit margin is just terrible, barely worth the effort. Looking at his damaged glove, Sang realizes he probably won't be doing this job for long. All he does is fill the container and unload it, over and over again, mind-numbing work. Trust me, even the most patient person would struggle to endure this for more than 6 hours straight. Junmo says he could probably last longer if he just had a better gas mask and higher quality gear. Equipment, Sang figures he couldn't last 2 hours in there, let alone 6. But then a brilliant idea strikes him. He points to his clone and asks, what if he went in his place, and you and I are about to see this kid has absolutely zero pity. He just shoves a gas mask onto the clone's face, then ties the laces of his own combat boots. He pulls on some gloves, protecting his hands from the harsh conditions. Proud and optimistic, Sang waves goodbye to his clone, wishing number 2 the best of luck out there. Without wasting another second, he asks Junmo if they can head to the horned rabbit hunting ground. He turns to point to clone number 1, but he's not with them. Sang's face goes completely blank as he remembers a crucial detail. He still hasn't picked him up from the gym. Poor clone number 1 is waiting with his gym bag. His body is trembling from that intense workout, and yep, we're looking right at him, waiting patiently just as his master ordered. A car pulls up and parks right beside him. It's Sang yelling from the window for number 1 to get in the car. The sun is setting. It casts a warm glow over the entire city. Junmo asks Sang a simple question. Does he really plan on just calling his clones number 1 and number 2? Sang just explains that since they all look identical, things would get pretty confusing. If he tried giving them all different, creative names. The man actually agrees with him, saying that since they're just clones, names aren't really necessary. Changing the subject, Sang says he heard people usually use guns to hunt horned rabbits. He makes a little gun gesture with his hand, asking if he'll need to prepare any special equipment. Junmo explains that he can use his own gear, assuming he has any. But there's also equipment for rent right there at the hunting ground, though it's not cheap. Still, he agrees the kid will need his own stuff eventually. Since rented gear can only be used on-site, it makes it easier for the owners to collect it. Sang puts a hand to his face, lost in thought until he hears a noise. It's Junmo telling him they've arrived. That's what the sound was. They're now at the Yu Jangan field, and it's packed with battle tanks and all kinds of military hardware. The guards securing the area are armed to the teeth. One of them uses light sticks to signal the way for tanks and other aircraft. This place is absolutely enormous. Trust me, it's nothing like the slime hunting ground. Junmo explains this is the famous field where a monster invasion once took place. With a hand on his chin, Sang thinks he's definitely heard about this before. Normally, portals are completely cut off from the outside world. Most hunts happen after the hunters have already gone inside the portal. However, in some cases, a monster breaks through and just destroys everything in its path, turning the whole area into a war zone. And 5 years ago, it happened right here. Most of the strongest monsters were defeated, leaving only a handful of weaker ones behind. Just some F and E-class creatures remain, so it's actually a great spot. Worried, Sang asks if they're going to get any complaints about the noise. The two get ready to enter, stopping at a weapon rental shop first. A scowling attendant shows them a powerful gun and says it'll be 700,000 won total. Sang winces. He knows that's a ton of money, but he just hands over his card. Junmo explains that the ammunition is the real killer expense, but if he manages to hunt just one single horned rabbit, everything changes. They're just that valuable. The field itself is divided into different sections, and the spot they're heading for. They're heading up to the 3rd floor, reaching their spot as the man in front announces that they've made it to their destination. And as they're standing there, a deafening blast just erupts. Juno claps his hands over his ears. The field actually has a surprisingly chill vibe. People are shooting while others eat on the sidelines, just resting and taking a break. A long-haired guy smoking a cigarette complains that he missed again while holding his gun. And another dude in a bucket hat holds up a horned rabbit he just hunted. He's already got a few in his bag talk about a successful hunt. This totally impresses our protagonist, since he was told that hunting even one is a massive challenge. Sang's spot is number 4, so Junmo points out where the kid needs to go. As they get ready, the agent asks if he's confident in his shooting. Let's see him back this up. Sang assembles his gun with a smug laugh, asking who he thinks he is. Getting cocky, he says he only missed 3 shots during his shooting test, but admits the target was a lot closer back then. He finishes assembling the gun, saying he feels so sorry for the horned rabbits. And to protect his ears, he puts on a pair of earmuffs. As he aims, he declares the rabbits won't be able to escape the aim of the legendary Eagle Eye of Yu Jangan. For a second, Junmo is just glad everyone there is wearing some ear protection. Our protagonist manages to spot a rabbit standing stock, still in the field. He screams at the top of his lungs that he found one, and his speed shocks Junmo. Calmly, sharply, he zeroes in on the center of his target. Then, with extreme care, he squeezes the trigger. As he fires his first shot, he thinks to himself, the hunt begins. Fast forward 3 hours, night has fallen over the hunting ground, the sky is completely dark. And our main character looks like he's seen a ghost. Yeah, I think we both know what this means. He didn't manage to land a single shot, and he is absolutely devastated. Utterly disappointed, he slumps into his chair and admits that it makes sense. He felt like his aim was perfect. The problem: the rabbits have very long ears and extremely sharp hearing. They can detect the shot before it even gets there. And with the distance from the tower to the field, they have plenty of time to escape. Frustrated, Sang explains that the moment he tried to fire, the horned rabbit was already gone. Agent Junmo also had to leave because it was getting late. He didn't even make back the money he spent on ammo. Ouch. He wonders if he should just call it a day. Then he calls out for number 1, who promptly answers his master. Sang orders him to hunt the rabbits with the gun. Whenever he catches one, he has to send Sang a message, and if he runs out of bullets, he should call. The poor protagonist sighs, hating that he has to resort to this. And so he decides to head home, his day totally over. Back in the comfort of his home, he's in bed staring at his status screen. He notices small increases in his mana, which are happening because number 2 is hunting slimes very effectively. Opening his overall status window, he sees the huge boosts taking place. His stats are increasing constantly, but something is worrying him. He remembers what went down earlier with the leader of the Heisen Guild, who nearly got him into some very serious trouble. Closing his eyes and trying to calm down, he knows he still has a long way to go. You and I can see the kid is starting to get sleepy. He yawns after such an eventful day, but he can't stop thinking. Thinking about those pesky rabbits that slipped through his fingers. Sang's eyes snap back open, unable to relax. He just needs his number 1 clone to catch one rabbit to make that gun worth the cost. Finally, he rolls over, and it looks like he's about to drift off. But then his phone lights up, blasting message notifications across the screen. In the middle of the night, 46 unread messages. And you can bet most of them are from his clone, who went rabbit hunting. It's a brand new day in the city. The sky is bright blue, a few clouds floating by. We see a shop tucked away in a building complex, surrounded by signs. This is Junmo, lost in thought, staring out his office window, but a ringing phone shatters the quiet moment. He picks up instantly, professionally answering for the JM agency. The voice on the line asks if this is the agency for a hunter named Zhang Sang-woo. The caller introduces himself. He's the manager of the slime hunting grounds. He tells Junmo to get over there, fast. When Junmo asks why, the manager says Sang has been hunting for 24 hours straight. And he's completely snapped. Now pay attention, because this is where it all goes sideways. Voice shaking, Junmo promises he's on his way. Meanwhile, our hero is just waking up from a perfectly good nap. He checks his phone, seeing a few messages that clone number 1 has run out of bullets, and suddenly, his eyes go wide as he scrolls through his notifications. Why are there so many messages piled up? Sang looks like he's just seen a ghost, completely glued to the screen. His agent is already at the slime hunting ground. And yeah, he's wearing that exact same shocked expression, the huge tanks for the slime liquid. They're completely full, to the brim. The hunt wasn't just successful, it was insane. The manager can't believe it. How did he fill all these containers in just one day? Other hunters approach a masked man, clearly worried about him. Then a red liquid starts dripping from underneath the man's mask. Junmo pulls out his phone and makes a call, thinking this is the absolute worst timing for this. On the other end, Sang casually picks up. The agent frantically tells him his clone filled every single container and they're about to be cleared out. He needs to order his clone to stop hunting, now. Sang is thrilled to hear the news, but then asks if the cleaners can also swing by Eugengan. Junmo is confused, asking what on earth he's talking about, and then we see it. A literal mountain of hunted horned rabbits is piled up at the location. Our protagonist explains the monster carcasses are completely blocking the road. A guy on scene says he can't even count them all. Everyone is just speechless. Another hunter whispers that nobody would even notice if he just took one, and there's clone number 1 sitting at his post in a cap and mask, his hands absolutely filthy from the non-stop hunt. That's when a man in a suit approaches, holding out a business card. He says the clone has shown some seriously incredible skills. You and I know what this means, a guild scout. The leader is Kim Byung, but before the clone can even react, the man asks if he's already in a guild. The clone just sits there in complete silence, ignoring every single question. Shaiking. The man in the suit tries to play it cool, telling himself that most talented hunters are a little eccentric. Another scout nearby just crosses his arms and sighs, "Nope, not a chance." All right, let's watch as all these suits try and fail to get a single word out of the clone. But he says nothing. He quickly realizes they're all recruiters from major guilds. While the corporate types are busy talking to a brick wall, Sang approaches his clone. He hands him a small green box and in a low voice tells him it's more ammo. Still whispering, he tells the clone to keep hunting, and if an agent shows up, just to let him handle the carcasses. The protagonist pats his clone on the shoulder, praising him and saying, "That was really good." And for the very first time, you and I get to see a flicker of emotion from the clone. He looks genuinely happy to receive a compliment, and without delay, he reloads his weapon. With more ammo locked in, he's ready for another round. Everyone around is just stunned. They can't believe he's getting ready to hunt again, but now they're curious. They want to see how this mysterious man operates. Some even start filming him. Watching from afar, Sang thinks he might have underestimated what his clones are capable of. Right now, they're only receiving 50% of his stats, which means they can do half of what Sang can, but their ability to act like machines. With zero hesitation and insane concentration, those are huge advantages. Our main character is lost in thought when suddenly a voice cuts through. "Teacher," a shout that snaps him out of his trance. Turning his head, the young woman asks him what he's thinking so hard about. He tries to play it cool, saying he was just observing her and she was doing much better than last time. But she insists, asking what was really on his mind. Sang explains it's nothing major. He just went to a hunting ground and did way better than he expected. Haein is shocked. Her tutor is a hunter. She practically jumps out of her chair. The boy forgot he never mentioned it, and she says she had no idea. Then she pulls out her phone and asks if her teacher knows about the hunter that everyone has been gossiping about all day. Now get ready for this. She shows him a video, saying it's Yu Jang-sun's Hawkeye sharpshooter. And Sang nearly chokes when he sees it's his clone. Still dazed, he can't even answer. She moves the phone even closer, saying the guy has already hunted over 200 rabbits. He might set a new record, but he doesn't say a single word. He doesn't respond to anyone, and that just makes him even cooler. So mysterious. When asked for his name, he only replied that he is Yu Jang-sun's Hawkeye. This piece of info makes Sang's face absolutely sink. The young woman says she thinks the hunter is really cool, and that her real dream is to become a hunter, too. The protagonist asks if she's an awakened. She nods yes, and that she has a license, too, but she's afraid to actually go to the hunting grounds. She gulps, taking a moment as she looks at him, tucking her hair behind her ear. She asks if she gets a good grade, could he take her to a hunting ground just once. Sang says that's not hard, but there's a condition. If she can pass the university entrance exam, he will definitely take her. The girl gets excited immediately, and he adds that he knows some safe hunting grounds. Then she holds up her pinky finger, asking him to seal the deal with a promise. The boy sighs, pleased to see his student's determination and willingness. And trust me, that one promise changes everything, as he links his pinky with hers. With a determined smile, she tells him not to change his mind as night begins to fall. All right, let's dive in. Sang tells his student to keep up the amazing work because at this rate, she's a shoo-in for Jianguk University. A little later, the bedroom door opens, light spilling out. Hyen's mom is at the sink washing dishes, surprised to see the lesson is over. She asks if everything went okay, and our protagonist just gives a simple confirmation. Meanwhile, Hyen has her ear glued to the door, listening in on them. She hears her mother and her teacher talking, and he's singing her praises. Her mom offers Sang dinner, but he politely declines, saying he has to be somewhere. He promises to be back on Monday. Hearing that, the girl immediately starts to blush. She flops onto her bed, dreamily hugging a teddy bear, just thinking about him. She pictures her next lesson, forming a tiny flame in her hand. Her teacher is a hunter, she thinks, and because of that, their talk today was amazing. At first, she wasn't so sure, since he was an acquaintance of her father's. But now, she's definitely changed her mind about him. She remembers his smile and her heart starts to race. He's kind, he's considerate. And on top of all that, she thinks he's a fantastic teacher. The girl recalls that genuine smile Sang sometimes gives her during their lessons. She clutches her teddy bear, face bright red, thinking he's actually pretty cute. But then suddenly her whole expression shifts, the blush fades. She sighs, then sits down at her desk with a look of pure determination. Time to study even harder. Night falls, calm and quiet. The sky is pitch black. And our hero has arrived at the hunter base, riding an elevator up. He's wondering if the carcass collection team is finished with their work yet. Juno is already there waiting and looks surprised to see our main character. Spotting his agent, Sang asks if he was out on the field too. Men carry boxes nearby. Junmo explains he was just checking on the collection process and asks Sang where he's been. Sang tells him he was busy with his part-time job as a tutor. A man walks by, carrying a huge horned rabbit on his back. The agent mentions he's called in collection teams before, but never this many. Not just for a bunch of horned rabbits, the final count was 352. And yeah, collecting that many corpses takes a whole lot of manpower. Juno then asks if Sang saw the payment he sent over. Sang admits he hasn't checked yet and decides to look at it right now. And just like that once empty bank account is now overflowing with cash. You and I both know that look. That's the face of a man who just hit the absolute jackpot. With sweat dripping down his face, he stammers, asking if this amount is even real. Junmo explains that since his skills surpassed Frank's, he bumped the pay to the 83% rate for E-rankers. Sang is grateful, saying he isn't even an E-rank yet, but thanks him profusely. But then a voice from nearby calls out to the two of them. Sang, his clone, and Junmo all turn to see who it is. The guy looks tough, has a scar across his face, and rudely asks if Junmo is the manager. He points right at the clone, who's still wearing that little cap and mask. The agent immediately steps in front of the clone, asking who wants to know. He says he's a hunter whose prey got stolen, and his face says it all. He is not happy. Apparently, every single rabbit he was hunting got snatched up by the clone. So he says today's entire hunt should be his. Trust me, you'll want to see how this plays out. With his neck exposed, the smug guy demands they pay up. Junmo is clearly on edge. Yeah, you and I both know you never want to deal with guys like this. He whispers to Sang that they definitely picked the wrong spot. But Sang just says he didn't even know these kinds of lowlifes existed. With a hand on his chin, our main character starts thinking of a way out of this situation. Then, very quietly, he tells his agent he's got an idea. The opportunistic jerk watches them talking and asks what they're whispering about. But holding out a hand, he says he's a man of principles and will only take 10%. As if his soul left his body, Sang just stares, looking completely dumbfounded. The thug asks if he's laughing, if he thinks he looks like some kind of clown. Sang puts a hand on his clone's shoulder and tells the man not to worry, because they won't be coming back for a few days. He tells his agent it's time to go. But the man gets livid and refuses to back down, screaming that he's not finished here. The two of them just ignore the guy and walk past him, with Sang saying they're heading to the cafe. This makes the thug absolutely furious. The veins on his forehead start to bulge. Then he winds up a massive punch aimed right for our hero, screaming at him not to ignore him. Now watch closely, this is where the plan kicks in. Sang orders number 1 to act. The clone's eyes glow like a newly activated robot as he steps in front of the punch that was about to hit Sang. The fist connects with full, brutal force. He's thrown backwards by the raw impact, and the man looks genuinely confused. The force of that punch was insane. And poor number 1 goes flying, crashing into a stack of boxes like a pinball before he lands hard on his back. His arms are spread wide. The punch must have done some real damage because there are scuff marks all over his mask. The thug's whole demeanor changes now. He gets defensive, saying he didn't even hit him that hard. So Sang seizes the moment, raises his phone and starts recording everything. And yep, I know what you're thinking, brilliant move. Our main character yells that people won't let this slide if they find out someone used such insane violence in a sacred hunting ground. And just like that, the thug is cornered, looking around as the cleanup crew starts staring and shouting. Sang adds that it would be a real shame if this video ended up on the Hunter web. The guy's face turns beet red, veins popping. He's nervous and totally at a loss for words. Getting closer to him, Sang places a hand on the guy's shoulder, looking completely in control. With the dark, sinister aura, he suggests they should just go their separate ways. The man starts gritting his teeth in rage, left with absolutely no choice. Later at a cozy cafe, Sang is having a drink when he asks, startled, about the Hyung Guild. Junmo thinks that Hunter looking for a fight earlier was a member. Since the Hyung Guild is massive, it has every kind of person imaginable, including absolute brawling scumbags. While the clone chugs his entire drink in one gulp, Sang asks how his agent knew the guy was from that guild. Junmo explains that from the moment they walked in, the man wouldn't stop giving him a sinister death stare, and he believes that's the signature of the Hyung Guild. And Sang has a theory you and I should probably listen to: revenge. They probably attacked thinking that Sang's clone was another hunter from the JM agency. Alright, let's jump right in. The agent straight up admits hunters from JM I don't last long and usually leave broke. And even now, the poor agent can't guarantee that Yuno will be safe. He warns him about more sabotage from Hyung, but our boy confidently says he knew. He was aware of all the risks and still decided to join their crew. That doesn't exactly calm the agent's nerves, but he seems to understand. Sang declares he won't let those thugs threaten him, adding he has a plan to level up fast. The kid keeps chatting with his new colleague, and the man looks impressed. This kid is way sharper than he first appeared. Their conversation goes on for a bit while they chill at a cafe. After hashing out the details, the boy asks the agent what he thinks of his plan. With a look of pure shock, Juno admits he'd never thought of it that way. He jots it down in his notebook and asks if 2 p.m. tomorrow works for him. They agree to meet at the giant Hunter Market, a truly massive building. The Hunter Market is a gigantic place with colorful floors and has everything. It's got equipment, weapons, basically anything a hunter could ever want. It's been the main hub for supplies since the very beginning. But recently, a new department store chain moved in and took over the industry. Now that he's loaded, Sang hits the shops, and yeah, it's time for the classic power-up montage. He starts by trying on some seriously cool armor made of titanium. It's designed for E-class monsters. He puts it on and says it's super light and comfortable. He absolutely loves it. On top of that, it comes with a dagger in a scabbard. He draws the sharp blade, checking its quality. Since he'll be using weapons from now on, this is a pretty sweet bonus. So he asks for 2 more identical armor sets, and the seller happily agrees. Our boy leaves the shop totally loaded down with new gear. Money talks. He remembers he also needs to pick up some new skills for his arsenal. He's not sure if he can even find the specific skill he wants in this market. The agent suggests they check out a store called Heritage. This shop is filled with all sorts of weird items that look like crystal balls. The two of them start scanning the display cases for what our hero needs. And then Sang spots it, glowing inside a brilliant blue orb. The skill is called Familiar, and it lets the hunter share senses with their summons. Not only is it incredibly useful, it also costs an absolute fortune. The boy starts to wonder if he really needs 2 kidneys to survive. He looks at his agent with a totally shameless expression and asks for an advance. Poor Jun Mo looks like he's about to cry, but says he can try to lend him 50 million won. Sang thanks him, promising he can figure out how to cover the rest of the cost. It's a huge risk for the agent's credit, but our boy has complete faith. He believes the skill will be worth it, and they'll make the money back in no time. So the two of them purchase the expensive little orb and head to another spot. Our hero pulls out the instruction manual that came with the device. There are 2 methods for activating the skill, one for mana users and one for non-users. Since he can't use mana, he takes out a small remote to get the thing started. Then he places his hand directly on the orb, making contact with his body. He trembles slightly, a little nervous this won't work, and honestly, so are we. Squeezing his eyes shut, he decides to press the button. Let's see what kind of wild skill he's just created. A brilliant orange light pours from the orb, lighting up the entire room. The light expands so fast it creates a huge, blinding explosion. And then the system notification pops up, announcing that the familiar skill has been created. It's level 1, and its power is sharing senses with a chosen target. Sang just stares at his hands with a look of pure confusion as the orb disappears. And then, after that whole light show, he clenches his fists. He can feel the new power flowing right through his veins. He pushes himself up. He calls for his beloved and totally obedient clones, who walk in perfectly synchronized. They come together before their master, already dressed for the mission ahead. They're wearing the armor he bought earlier. Sang gives them an encouraging look. And with a nod, he tells them to begin. Now, rewind to when he was chatting with his agent. He asked him what he thought about the recent hunt's results. The agent said the outcome was incredible, way beyond anything he could have expected. Sang explains that the clones only have half his stats, yet one of them caught over 300 rabbits. And get this, when he ordered a clone to take a punch for him, it didn't even hesitate. It stepped right in front of him without an ounce of fear, and that right there, that's the real weapon. It takes serious guts not to be afraid of taking a fist right to the face. Sang is certain it could have easily beaten that thug all by itself. Jun Mo gets it. The kid is saying that even with lower stats, their body control is on another level. Sang confirms it, saying he's going to use that to his advantage. The agent asks how, and he explains his plan. First, he needs 2 training grounds. One for practicing his long-range skills, and another for short-range combat. They arrive at the first training ground, where a burly instructor greets them. Then they head to a second location, a shooting range, to practice their aim. They're going to be shooting at clay pigeons. The protagonist's plan is simple. He's going to push the clones' training to the absolute limit until they shatter their boundaries. And at both training grounds, the instructors are immediately impressed. The muscly-bound instructor at the combat ground and the old man at the range can't believe it. Both clones show the same incredible attitude. At the training ground, the clone wants a real duel. The teacher is a little worried about that, and over at the shooting range. Instead of the usual shotgun, the other clone asks for a pistol. Talk about unfiltered confidence. Both clones have the exact same determined, courageous look in their eyes as they say they're sure. At the physical training ground, the clone grabs his batons and tells his opponent to get ready. And at the shooting range, the other clone picks up a real pistol, not some practice gun. The shooting instructor is clearly nervous about this whole situation. Holding a timer, he gives the signal to begin. Meanwhile, at the combat ground, the instructor sent out his craziest fighter to go up against the clone. The two challenges begin at the exact same moment. The psycho fighter lunges forward, and the clay pigeon is launched into the sky with a lightning-fast move. The combat clone snatches one of his opponent's batons right out of his hand, and the other clone nails the flying pigeon with a single, perfect pistol shot. The burly instructor's jaw is on the floor, completely unable to process what he's seeing. At the same time, the shooting instructor looks like he's just seen a ghost. Can you blame them? The combat clone is still in his fighting stance, baton held at the ready. We're back, and the shooter clone's gun is still smoking from the last shot. Sang continues his talk with Juno. Trust me, you need to hear why he needs this skill. The agent is genuinely surprised by how airtight his explanation is. He still can't grasp why the boy wants to share his vision with the clone. But Sang explains it goes way beyond just sharing his sight. The most important part is that the other senses will be connected too. Imagine him activating this skill while his clones are in the middle of a firefight. At that very moment, the boy closes his eyes, concentrating as hard as he can. And then it happens. Now pay attention. He activates his familiar skill. His aura explodes into a neon blue, crackling with simmering energy. It's a big bang for his senses as he starts experiencing everything at once. He can see his clone fighting with a baton and a wild opponent closing in. The enemy is charging forward with absolute full force. Our protagonist can see the entire fight from a distance as it unfolds in real time. He controls the angle of the clone's joints and its balance to dodge attacks. With that, the clone manages to avoid the blow with flawless ninja-like reflexes. Every muscle movement and even the flow of force are controlled by Sang. He's also controlling his clone's breathing as it prepares for a shot. This makes his clone's aim and dexterity infinitely better. The aim and direction of his vision are strategically modified on the fly. The clay pigeon seems to move in slow motion, making it a much easier target. And Sang can do this for every single one of his clone's movements. He remains still, eyes closed, focused on every single action. Now he slowly opens his eyes, returning to his own reality. With a determined smile, he knows, okay, this skill is absolutely broken right. As he uses the familiar skill, his aura ignites into a blue flame. He looks at his hand, proud of this ability, knowing it was a fantastic deal. The sensations he just felt were magnificent, like air rushing past his face. The smell of gunpowder, the kickback from the gun he fired, he felt it all. He can even feel the exhaustion his clones must be dealing with. But he didn't move at all, he just shared their senses and movements. So it's as if he could perfectly replicate any of those moves right now. A status screen pops up, telling him his strength and cooldown time increased. He decides to reconnect with number 1 and see who he's fighting now. And again, he closes his eyes, concentrating to activate the skill once more. Sang unleashes his flaming blue aura again, releasing its incredible power. We can see several punching bags nearby. He just transported his consciousness. He's in the gym. Number 1 is in a battle stance, holding his staffs. His opponent is also using 2 staffs. It's that man in the kimono. This guy looks like one of the strongest fighters here. Sang can immediately tell this opponent will be a serious challenge. The other students in the dojo are shocked that the trainer is fighting personally. You and I are about to see this go down. Both opponents prepare for battle. Number 1 starts the fight with a precise strike that disarms the trainer instantly. The blow is extremely powerful, knocking the muscular trainer off balance. All right, stick with me here. The big guy thinks he's got no offense with a staff, but his defense. That's a whole different story. It's like he can predict every single attack. This has the trainer worried, and you can tell he's starting to focus. The veins on his face bulge. And with that power-up, he lands a solid hit right on the clone's staff. The impact makes the clone's arms tremble slightly. He raises his arm with such phenomenal strength that it actually startles the instructor. The two opponents get right in each other's faces for a sinister stare-down. The instructor is amazed by that power and by how he copied the move instantly. Things are looking bad for the big guy, who's starting to worry if he can even win this. So he unleashes a last-resort move with everything he's got. But the clone dodges it clean, and you have to see this, the crowd goes absolutely wild. They can't believe he managed to avoid that, and taking advantage of the instructor's open guard. He makes his move, he lands a blow that hits the staff, but it also connects with the man's shoulder. Shocked, the instructor feels the full impact. It's like smoke is rising from his weapon. He realizes he's also been cornered. The wall is directly behind him. Seeing his advantage, number 1 prepares his next attack. But the instructor hasn't shown all his tricks just yet. Using the wall for support, he manages to pull off a flip to dodge the blow from above. This insane move seriously impresses Sang, whose eyes go wide. The brawny man lands from his jump, right behind the main character's clone. His eyes are glazed over, completely locked on his opponent's movements. He is still ready to fight. The students are proud of their trainer, but they know it was a close call. Meanwhile, poor Sang is feeling the effects of his last attack. An excruciating pain shoots through his wrist. As he gets up, the trainer says that last blow was dangerous. He asks number 1 if he still wants to continue the fight. Through his thoughts, Sang asks his clone if he's okay, and the copy just lowers his head. His face hidden by his cap. Then, in an extraordinary leap, I know what you're thinking, and yes, it happens. He performs the exact same move as the trainer, using the wall for momentum. This leaves the other students present completely speechless, and the trainer too. He doesn't even know where to look. Sang speaks with his clone again through his mind. He's asking if he's going to keep going. Number 1 finishes his jump. Exactly like the trainer did, with a perfect landing, holding his staff close. He politely asks to go again. Smiling, the trainer accepts the challenge. He readies his staffs, but Sang has seen enough, and he decides to switch to number 2. And just like that, you and I are about to see a totally new skill set. A blue aura forms around the clone. The skill activates. The target was shattered in midair, turning into tiny fragments. A blonde, well-dressed man laughs and asks if his darling saw that. A woman with long black hair claps and says she did, calling him dear. Sang prefers to stay quiet so he doesn't offend anyone, but he finds the whole scene pretty cringy. He realizes number 2 is so zoned in that he's even shooting at the targets next to him. He decides to let it go and just focus on the shot. The well-dressed man asks for more targets. Now it's number 2's turn. He gets into position at the shooting range. Sang makes sure his upper body is stable. He readies his aim. He knows he needs to keep his body still and just pivot, following the target's trajectory, and then when the sight and the supposed. All right, stick with me here. He lines up the shot, pulls the trigger, and just like that, the clay pigeon explodes into pieces. Another point for our skilled marksman. Smoke curls from the barrel after the shot. Number 2 is still observing. He's taking in the result of that perfect shot. Sang tells him to remember every single detail. With a determined, ready gaze, his clone number 2 is on fire. The sky is turning a deep orange as the sun starts to set, but Sang is focused. Completely focused, his blue aura flaring to life as he uses his familiar skill. He opens his eyes, his expression cold and serious. The kid is completely drained. Switching between his clones is taking a massive toll on his body. Looking at his own hand, he feels the whole world start to spin around him. His mana is totally gone, and he's starting to feel incredibly dizzy. It's time to rest. Our main character is now sitting on a bench. He's thinking the clones' movements are pretty wild. Since they don't feel fear or hesitation, they just charge straight ahead. Next time, he decides to go with them, just to see what might happen if he's there too. Himself, but here's where things get interesting. Someone is approaching the spot where Sang is sitting. A girl with striking purple hair passes by. It's Haeyoung, and she recognizes him. She immediately calls out his name. Our guy is completely surprised to run into her here. He's worried, asking her what she could be doing out so late at night. She just explains that she was at the library. He's suspicious, but she gets angry, snapping back that she was just doing her homework, but a few strange men are watching them. A tough-looking man smokes a cigarette, asking if this is the guy. The same guy the other one was just talking about. The three of them look like they're straight out of a mob movie, all with gangster faces. And yeah, I know what you're thinking, this is bad news. And the voice on the other end of the line asks if he just let Kangjin Mo go. It's the man who tried to bribe Sang earlier. Terrified, he says he was just trying to intimidate him, but someone was there filming the entire thing. The voice on the phone yells, asking if it was filmed, but then just tells him to forget about it. Forget it, say nothing, and don't even go anywhere near the Yujang field. The voice adds that if anything happens, he must say it has nothing to do with the Hyang Guild. And finally, he tells him to pretend he's just some street thug. Then he hangs up. The man gets pissed off and hurls his phone against the wall. He throws it with all his might, cursing the man on the other end of the line. Filled with rage, he stomps on the phone, screaming all kinds of curses like a madman. While mercilessly stomping on the broken device, he screams out loud, asking if the guy on the phone even knows who he's dealing with. But mid-tantrum, a voice behind him asks why he's so angry. This is Gun So Hyung, a big mean-looking dude. He's accompanied by a man with long, straight hair, and the big guy's smile is sinister. Pure evil, he definitely seems like a very dangerous person to cross. There are cigarette butts littering the ground. What an absolute dump. The three of them are so weird and intimidating that people walk way around them. Hyung calls the guy kid and says he knew this would happen when he joined the country's #1 guild. Shaking, the man asks if there's still work for him to do. He says the guild told him to stay away from the Yujengan field. Hyung turns to the long-haired guy named Cheng Wan, who says he might have some part-time work for the man, but as they're talking, he notices Sang and Haeyoung nearby, and trust me, you'll want to see this. And what do you know, those two are casually chatting just meters ahead. The guy with the scar points right at Song and says, "That's the punk who recorded the video." The big guy tells him to chill out, saying he's getting way too worked up. Leaning on a pillar, a third man watches. He moves closer to his buddy, his eyes locked on our hero and the girl. Sang looks totally relaxed and at ease as they talk. Haeyoung asks her teacher what brings him here, and he just says he's exercising. A voice interrupts them. Someone grinds a cigarette out with their boot as they approach. He says he heard his little brother Oz sang something. It's the three mean-looking thugs heading straight for them. The girl asks who they are. Sang quips that he's never seen anyone bigger, but I think we all know who's with them. The scar-faced guy is in the crew. The moment Sang recognizes him, his mind starts racing. He immediately starts thinking about his clones. Our hero steps in front of the girl, asking how he can help them. Scarface immediately turns bright red with rage. He makes a sour face, but before he can explode, his huge friend tells him to take it easy. He explains he's here because he heard Sang has a video of his little brother messing up while he was a little too excited. The big guy asks him to delete the video, promising they'll leave in peace. Sang holds up his phone, asking if everything's cool between them if he just deletes the video. He holds the phone up, pointing it at the thugs, asking what kind of guarantee he has that they'll actually let him go. The big guy just smirks. He covers his mouth. letting out a sarcastic little laugh, and says that he can see Sang isn't an idiot, and no, they won't let him leave unharmed. He adds that our hero wasn't smart enough to delete it right away, so now it really doesn't make a difference. Speaking quietly, our hero tells Haeyang to wait for the right moment. And run, now watch this part closely. He turns to the guys and says, "Oh, there's a difference." He's scared and didn't think he'd be in this deep so soon, but he still gets into a fighting stance. The difference, he says, is that he's about to beat the crap out of all three of them. The big guy just laughs, admiring the kid's guts. One of the goons rushes towards him as the boss orders them to give Sang a little lesson. Our protagonist manages to dodge the first blow, but it's 2 against 1. This won't be easy. The long-haired goon manages to land a solid punch right on our poor guy's head. Meanwhile, the other one lands a hard kick. Reeling from the hits, our protagonist is in deep trouble. Before he can recover, another fist connects hard with his chin. Extremely worried, Haeyang screams for her teacher. Unable to help, she watches him fall. He hits the ground after taking so many hits. He's badly hurt and realizes this first real fight isn't going so well. But the brave girl stands in front of him, and at her fingertips, a light begins to charge up. The light takes the shape of a ball in her hand as she yells for them to stay back. Getting up with difficulty, Sang looks at his student who's trying to defend him. But as he watches, he notices something that starts to worry him. The young lady is trying, but she's trembling, a lot. The gangsters realize she's an awakened, and trust me, they are not happy about that at all. He shoves the other 2 aside, asking if they're really scared of one high school girl. Stepping up, he asks her what's gonna happen if they don't move. The big guy shows zero mercy, getting right in her face to intimidate her. But before he can take another step, the girl yells at him to stay back, and she unleashes her energy. The huge man's body closes in on her. She's shaking in her boots, gritting her teeth, absolutely terrified. And then, a little clumsily, she lets loose a strike from her hand. The attack flies straight for the big guy's massive gut and connects. This impact creates an explosion that rocks the area, kicking up a storm of dust and smoke. The other 2 thugs scream out Haeyang's name, worried for their boss. A moment later, the smoke starts to clear. Haeyang is still standing, saying that awakened people are a dime a dozen, so she shouldn't get cocky. The only real damage was to his clothes, which are now ripped to shreds, revealing some seriously sinister tattoos. He raises a giant arm, ready to slap her, telling Haeyang it's time to grow up. But just as the attack is about to land, Sang jumps right in front of her. With pure hatred in his eyes, he tells the thug their fight isn't over yet. And with every ounce of his strength, he lands a punch square on Haeyang's face. With his guard shattered, his arms fly back, revealing an awakened bracelet. Haeyang sees it and is completely shocked by the discovery. Our protagonist is giving it his all in this totally unfair 3-on-1 fight. Haeyang definitely feels that solid punch to the face, groaning out in pain. Sang stays on guard as the big guy gets absolutely furious over what just happened. Now pay attention, this is where our main character starts thinking like a true fighter. It's not about the staff he saw, he needs to watch the enemy's shoulder and move before the attack even starts. He knows a real attack isn't just wild swinging. It's a full-body movement that shifts everything, engaging all the muscles from the legs to the waist and all the way up to the arms in one fluid motion. By being more calculating, more observant, Sang manages to land another solid blow on his opponent. But he sees he can't dodge the next punch. Haeyang is going to connect. So instead of dodging, he drives a double punch right into the guy's stomach. Sang is exhausted, gasping for air, but his opponent is way worse off, doubled over in pain. The protagonist's face is swollen from the hits he's taken, wiping his thumb across his lips. Haeyang says the kid actually knows how to fight. And now, with his eyes glowing red, he admits he was hesitant to hit someone who didn't even know how to throw a proper punch. Sang is still feeling the pain from that last hit, but he's not backing down. He realizes he managed to hurt him, but this guy is insanely strong. He starts to wonder if he's got some kind of strength-enhancing skill. Knowing that, he decides it's best not to let him land a single clean hit. The big guy charges forward, a wicked smile on his face. Sang uses his speed and sharp, thinking to land a punch before he even gets close. The punch connects square on the big guy's face. And you can see it with a swollen and bruised face. Hyung is not happy, cursing out our hero. He starts swinging his arms wildly, just trying to hit the boy no matter what. But Sang jumps out of the way and hits him again. You and I both know what he has to do. A powerful blow meant to cause some serious damage. As soon as he lands, the big guy prepares to punch him again, but Sang is faster, slamming his fist into the giant's huge face once more. Nearby, Chang is still crouched on the ground, watching the whole thing unfold and cheering his partner on. Our protagonist is so zoned in, he can't see anything else. He's 100% focused on the fight. Absolutely furious, Hung can't stand taking any more hits to the face and starts practically foaming with rage. His whole body begins to turn red, his tattoos seeming to pop right off his skin. The arm he's winding up looks like it's grown in size, and he's about to unleash it on Sang. Our boy knows this next hit is going to be massive. He has to dodge. But to his shock, a treacherous hand grabs his foot just as he's about to move. Now, watch this part closely. He looks down and sees Chang Wan, cowardly holding his foot so he can't escape. The boy is in a terrible position. He can't jump or move his body out of the way. And the giant unloads all of his rage in a tremendous punch right into Sang's stomach. He feels the attack with incredible force, like he's just been gored by a rhino. Hun is devastated. No, she screams, her eyes wide with terror. The attack sends our boy flying backward, smashing into a nearby wall. He crouches over, clutching his stomach and gasping for air, but it's incredibly difficult to take a breath. That blow was just too powerful. Trying to stay calm, he knows he needs to get his breathing under control. His eyes stay locked on his opponent. He refuses to go down, but Hung isn't finished yet. He readies another strike with that colossal arm. The impact is huge, and a cloud of black smoke suddenly erupts, but it's Hung who's reeling from the consequences. His eyes roll back into his head as he chokes for air. Sang looks at his opponent, completely confused about what just happened. And the one responsible for this is Hun, standing in a fighting stance with her hand raised high. The other two thugs are on the ground, cursing the girl out. Nobody saw this coming. She turns to them as they scream that she's an idiot who should have just left. But out of nowhere, the clones appear and start wailing on the two cheaters. The girl is shocked, but you can see she's also incredibly relieved. One of the clones is right beside her, his face covered by a mask. Hung gets distracted by the sounds of the fight behind him and looks back, but Sang immediately calls out for the big guy's attention. He wipes a cut on his face and says he can finally breathe properly now. And yeah, I know what you're thinking, payback time. With pure hatred in his eyes, the big guy charges. Our boy looks totally confident. He pulls the same move he used on the instructor back at the training grounds, using the wall as a springboard to dodge. As he comes flying back down, he zips past the big guy and thanks him for being such a good practice dummy. With all that momentum, he delivers a phenomenal kick straight to the giant's head. After that incredible move, Sang slumps to the floor. Panting and exhausted, but he's in way better shape than the big guy, who's completely broken on the ground. His friends aren't looking much better either. A status screen pops up, showing that Sang has gained points in muscular strength, speed, stamina, and dexterity. On top of that, his cloning ability has temporarily leveled up. He can now make 3 clones. And you and I just witnessed it. Face all beaten up, our boy just laughs as he gets stronger. And there it is, the moment the adrenaline wears off, his body just gives out completely. His 2 clones and Han rush over, worried sick, but Sang, he's got a huge grin on his face. Absolutely victorious. Later that night, the city is glowing under the street lights and houses. Hee-in's hand is all bandaged up, and Sang asks why she didn't run when she had the chance. She says that if she hadn't been there to help him, things would have been so much worse. And with a shaky voice, he admits she's right. The girl then says she was completely surprised, because she never would have believed the famous Supreme Hunter was actually one of Sang's clones. Hearing that, the clone gets all smug and puffed up with pride as our main character walks over. Sang asks her to keep it a secret, and she wonders why doesn't he want the fame. He explains it could attract the wrong kind of attention, so she promises to keep quiet. Her lips are sealed. Soon, they arrive at her house and she seems a little disappointed, almost like she wanted to keep talking. Our protagonist asks if her hand is okay, worrying if she can even hold a pen, but she just shows him it was her left hand that got hurt. Playfully, she asks if maybe he should give her less homework since she's injured. But he fires back, asking if she didn't already finish it all back at the library. Upset, she grumbles that his memory is way too good when it comes to things like this. Sang just smiles and sincerely thanks his student for everything she did for him today. He figures the only reason he won was because she stopped his opponent at the perfect time. Blushing a little, the young woman says she definitely played a very important role. She then teases him, saying a proper thank you involves a meal, not just empty words. And trust me, you and I both know she's basically inviting herself to dinner with that look. With a totally determined gaze, she says that taking her to dinner is now a promise. The two say their goodbyes, and she goes into her house completely pleased with herself. Sang promises himself he'll make sure she eats plenty of good meat. He continues on his way, feeling satisfied, but his two clones are just staring at him with these wide, curious eyes. Our hero feels their stares and gets a little awkward. He tells them to quit slacking off. He yells at them to get back to work, but they just explain that it's already late and the training grounds are closed. So Sang just crouches down and picks up a stick, giving them this sly little smile. He hands the sticks over to his clones and says they can just train in the park. Okay, let's jump forward 1 month to see what's changed. We're on the street where Agent Juno works. He's on the phone with Sang, asking about the plan. Sang replies that it was a complete success. He's with his clones and reports that he can now nail a target with a pistol and can even create a third clone. Juno asks if this means his training speed is about to get even faster. And looking at his status screen, you can see just how much he's leveled up in that short time. He tells his agent he's got a surprise for him, even though it's kind of sudden. He asks if Juno can secure 3-rank hunting grounds for the very next day. Proudly, the agent says he'll get them no matter what, which leaves Sang feeling very satisfied. He asks for the schedule, and Sang replies that he'll have the clones do 2 things. Exercise in the morning, then hunt in the afternoon. After hanging up with the agent, he looks over at his 3 clones. He decides one will train upper body, another on lower body, and the third will handle all the cardio. He tells them to head out to the park and to make sure they are back by noon sharp. The 3 bumbling clones almost take their weapons out for a stroll, and he has to scream at them to leave them at home. And while they're gone, you and I know the real Sang is already plotting his next big move. Let me show you our hero's new strategy: work smarter, not harder. His clones can recreate almost anything, so if he just studies the monsters and how to hunt them, it'll be a walk in the park for the clones. So our protagonist hits the books, watching every online tutorial he can find. The videos break down exactly which weapons to use and how. To guarantee a successful hunt, the next day we're back at his house. The clones return as ordered, but their master has huge dark circles under his eyes. The kid pulled an all-nighter and didn't even realize it was already noon. While he's practically dead on his feet, his clones are buzzing with energy. He tells them to shower up and get some food. As they take off their armor, he's already thinking about the monsters he researched, deciding to analyze their hunting progress and finally study up on mana. That's when Sang gets a text from his agent, who says he'll be there in just 10 minutes. The clones are absolutely wolfing down their food, when he tells them to get ready. They finish eating, and the agent meets our guy right at the entrance. The three clones, fully geared up, give off a seriously intimidating aura. Both Junmo and Sang can feel it. Turns out the agent secured three separate training grounds, all located close to one another. Our guy thanks him and asks him to watch the clones, because this time he's staying behind. He plans to participate, using his familiar skill while also training his mana breathing technique. The car starts, and the mission begins. Sang puts his hands on his hips, ready to do his part. Meanwhile, our boy puts on some instructional music to help him get in the zone. He breathes slowly, every single movement precise and careful, sitting down. Cross-legged, a blue aura begins to surround him, and he is completely focused. Now pay attention here, because the audio guide says to remember the feeling of using his skill, so he zeroes in on that exact sensation. He recalls that when he used the familiar skill, it felt like energy was just pouring out of him. With his eyes closed, he breathes in, feeling that energy now circulating through his body. His breathing is perfectly controlled, following the voice on the audio guide. Then he starts to feel something different building in his chest. It's as if all the energy is gathering in the center of his body, flowing slowly. His body feels like an entire universe filled with infinite stars of power. Abruptly, he snaps his eyes open, embracing this incredible sensation, and then a status window appears. He's acquired the meditation skill, which boosts his mana. Recovery. Okay, you and I need to see this. Meanwhile, in another hunting ground, a wounded man is crawling. He's on the floor, surrounded by monster corpses. The warrior is badly injured and has no idea how a monster this strong ended up in a rank E dungeon. A creature with razor-sharp teeth chews on the remains of some alien fish. The wounded man knows he has to report this to the authorities immediately. This monster is far stronger than anything this zone should contain, in total. Desperation, the man catches a glimpse of a reflection on his bracelet. He realizes there's a monster's shadow looming right behind him, the cursed creature. Closes in fast, ready to end the poor man's life. A blood-curdling scream can be heard even outside the dungeon. Just then, Juno's car door opens. He's arrived. All right, let's dive into the final hunting ground the agent found for the clones. This place is crawling with alien fish known for their bone-crushing jaws. One of the clones shuts the car door, and Junmo simply tells him to be careful. He then pulls out his phone, letting Sang know that all three have been dropped off. Junmo is buzzing, thinking about how incredible this all is. The idea that one person can hunt in 3 places at once is absolutely revolutionary. And depending on how this hunt goes, the entire hunter industry could be shaken. Meanwhile, back at Sang's house, he's feeling pretty smug about himself. Why? Because he's already snagged the mana breathing skill, or so he thinks. That smirk vanishes when he realizes mana breathing and meditation are totally different skills. Scratching his head, he figures getting the real mana breathing skill is going to be tough. Just then, he grabs his phone and sees a message from the agent. The clones have arrived. He focuses, deciding to use his familiar skill. And trust me, what he sees when he tunes in is absolutely wild. A giant rat gets hit right in its massive teeth, and the sight makes our hero scream. That's clone number 1, who's in the middle of hunting a truly disgusting rat. Looks like so far, there haven't been any major problems with the hunt. The guides were a huge help. Suddenly, more grotesque rats come rushing forward. Sang decides to keep watching to see if those guides were actually worth it. He remembers a clip from a tutorial. These rats are some of the most annoying F-rank monsters. The instructor in the video says it's best to hunt them down in groups. But when you absolutely have to go it alone, there are other ways to handle it. First, since they only charge in a straight line, it's a good idea to keep your distance. Keep your distance and shoot. That is exactly what number 1 does. Now pay attention, because when it's not possible to kill them all with gunfire, You have no choice but to engage them in close quarters combat. The rat's skulls are incredibly hard, so you have to hit them somewhere else. The best option. Aim for their spine, which is exactly what the clone does, landing a perfect hit. The rat is eliminated instantly, but just like regular rats, these things breed. They reproduce like crazy, so their numbers are absolutely massive. The instructor adjusts his glasses and says that if you've done your homework, they're just easy experience points. But some guy in the video yells that it's not so easy to hit a moving spine. The clone, however, is laser-focused and ready for any challenge that comes his way. Bullet casings fly through the air as he unloads on his targets. His shots hit the creature's spines dead on, and they get eliminated without much trouble. Over in a desert hunting ground, another clone is on the move. One of the sand dunes suddenly moves, shaking the ground like an earthquake. A massive scorpion appears. Now, the clones have the same techniques as their master. But they feel zero surprise or fear. They hunt without even thinking about it. They don't care about their opponent's level and are never intimidated by a difference in power. The clone stands victorious over the scorpion, gripping his weapon tightly. And all the while, Sang gets to experience the thrill of the hunt through his skill. And here's the best part. Status windows start popping up endlessly with all the victories. In another location, the third clone is busy hunting down those alien fish. As Sang's stats increase, the clones get a massive power-up too. Determined, our protagonist sets a goal. Alright, let's watch our boy's genius plan to clear F-class dungeons totally backfire. He's using his powerful clones. Meanwhile, in the same hunting ground, footsteps approach. Two hunters are talking about how eerily quiet the place is and the fact that they haven't seen a single monster. They get closer to a strange shape up ahead. What could it be? It's a massive, fresh pile of monster carcasses. One of them immediately starts calculating the profit, and they decide to bag everything. The sky is clear, a perfect day for a lucky find. A clone stands over his handiwork, surrounded by the corpses of monsters he's already wiped out. Sang knows the hunt is a huge success, but he feels like he's forgetting something. And then it hits him with pure panic. He remembers seeing the cleaning staff collecting horned rabbit carcasses earlier. And it clicks, he hasn't collected any of his loot so far. Knowing this, he immediately sends an order for all three clones to stop everything and start collecting the bodies. But he wonders if someone else might have already scooped them up. And he can't help but shed a few tears of pure regret. Then an idea hits him like a flash of inspiration. He notices some alien fish carcasses that number 3 isn't collecting. The clone's reasoning, he didn't hunt them, but now pay attention, this is a terrible idea. Sang explains now is not the time for honesty. Every single one of those is worth good money. So number 3 approaches the pile of fishy corpses to start collecting. It's a disgusting sight. Whoever hunted these things chopped them up like baby food, but as number 3 collects the remains, he notices something weird. He finds something else inside one of them. It's not part of the fish, and he asks if he should take it. When Sang sees it, his eyes go wide with pure horror. Because that's a human arm, and you and I both know this is bad. But while he's digging, something moves behind number 3, and he notices it. Sang spots the movement too and shouts a warning. The clone grabs his weapon. He stands up on high alert. Is it an enemy or someone trying to steal his loot? Then behind him, a strange noise catches his attention. An alien fish head lands right in front of him, chopped up just like the rest. And lurking behind number 3 is a massive, eel-like sea monster. He gets it now, the fish head was bait, and this clone is no fool. He realizes it's an ambush and spins around. But before he can do anything, his arm is ripped clean off, like a Lego piece with no effort. Poor number 3 is just confused, hit by a flood of pain and shock. But this is where we see the huge disadvantage of using a familiar skill. Because someone else is feeling every last bit of this, Sang screams. Excruciating pain shoots through his own arm, as if it was his that just got torn off. And then the connection to his familiar breaks. He wakes up as if from a horrible nightmare. Scared and trembling, the boy frantically looks at his arm to make sure it's still attached. It is, and he can still move it normally. But that experience was so horrifying, so traumatic for our protagonist that he can't even move. You and I just saw his greatest strength become his worst nightmare. A little calmer, he realizes the skills connection was completely severed. The pain hits him hard, but he knows this is no time to get lost in his thoughts. He snatches his phone, frantically dialing his agent, and Junmo picks up right away. The protagonist demands to know which field number 3 went to hunt in. The agent can tell something's wrong with Sang's voice and says it was the Incheon sewage treatment plant. Desperate, he tells Junmo to get number 1 and number 2 over there. Right now, he says he's on his way too and will explain everything when he gets there. And to put a long story short, he just says they have a really, really big problem. You say. Poor number 3 is absolutely wrecked, missing an arm, with injuries covering his entire body. The monster he's up against isn't just some sea creature, it's a humanoid beast that can actually wield a sword. And our poor clone just can't take it anymore. The beating was just too brutal. And he finally loses consciousness, collapsing before that marine monster, which just stares with a cold, empty expression. Sang slams the car door shut, rushing. He grabbed a taxi to get to the hunting ground as fast as humanly possible. He's sweating bullets, completely out of breath. The place is enormous, filled with colossal sewage treatment machines. Our protagonist realizes the connection to his number 3 clone has been severed. And worse, he still has a long cooldown before he can use that skill again. The guards at the entrance demand to see his ID bracelet. He shows it and rushes past the blockade. To Sang's relief, his agent is already there. They meet up and he managed to bring clones number 1 and number 2 with him. Sang quickly explains that number 3 is gone. And before it happened, he saw a crazy strong monster that was definitely not one of the alien fish. He says it had the head of a fish, but the arms and legs of something else. Junmo's eyes go wide at that description. This is bad, really bad. He says they have to alert the authorities and close the area immediately. Because that monster is known as the Fishman and it's a D-rank threat. Even a full party of E-class hunters would get wiped out by that thing. Sang tells him to warn the guards to stop anyone else from entering, but not yet. He orders him to wait until after his clones have already gone through the portal. Scratching his neck, Sang says they can't just sit back and do nothing. And with a confident smile, he asks his agent to trust him on this. But Junmo is seriously worried about this entire plan. The protagonist just closes his eyes and focuses, activating that familiar skill. The ability connects with his remaining clones, number 1 and number 2. They're now inside the hunting ground, surrounded by a dense forest. Sang orders them to head straight for the location where number 3 vanished. Both clones are on high alert, focused and ready for a fight. They're communicating silently with hand signals to avoid making any noise at all. Suddenly, a disgusting, wet sound echoes nearby, teeth tearing through flesh. The 2 clones have found it. The creature is devouring an unlucky alien fish. Now this is a huge opportunity. Our main character never thought he'd get a chance to strike first. He knows his own stats are E-class. But since his clones only get 53% of that, they're F-class at best. But the creature is distracted right now, and he knows his clones are master hunters. Skills, and from the bottom of his hero heart, you can tell he really believes it's possible. The kid orders his clones to aim for the monster's head. And so they open fire, determined to put this abomination down for good. The bullets slam into the fish's head, but they're not nearly strong enough to even scratch its hide. The poor clones are just left standing there, completely dumbfounded. Sang is just as confused. He realizes right then and there, bullets aren't going to work. That initial hail of gunfire only managed to tick off the horrifying, Tusi monster. And after letting out a roar, the beast leaps into the air like a flea jumping meters high. It comes crashing down right between the two clones, who barely manage to escape. One of the clones uses his dodge to set up his next move. He does a clean flip right over the monster's head, slicing his sword across its shoulder, managing to open a tiny wound on the huge fish's skin. Sang is in shock. The sword only made a little scratch, and trust me, the monster does not let it slide. It turns toward the clone, prepping an attack that smashes right into a tree instead. The clone was just fast enough to dodge, but because the beast is so massive, it's having a hard time swinging its sword around all these trees. Meanwhile, the other clone is still shooting. The monster's sword gets wedged deep inside the tree. That's how powerful the attack was. But the fish monster just flexes a little and shatters the tree without even trying. Sang yells to his clones to forget what he said. This beast can definitely use its sword in this forest. The tree trunk comes crashing to the ground with a massive thud. This monster is proving to be way more of a challenge than our hero ever imagined, but his clones feel absolutely no fear. They charge forward with everything they've got, managing to land a hit on the monster's arm, but it has zero effect. Sang's watching all of this unfold and realizes that none of these attacks are working. The huge monster grinds its teeth, focusing all its strength into its arm, readying a punch. And that punch connects hard with one of the clones. Our hero is worried now, wondering how they can possibly defeat this thing with such useless attacks. But then he remembers something. Now watch this. The bullets did have some effect. One of them ricocheted, but the other one caused some real damage, even if it was just a little. He gets an idea, aim for that exact wound it created and start shooting there again. With his skill, he manages to hit the exact spot, and the monster definitely feels it. Sang knows it was a brilliant idea. And just like that, he's got a new plan: fill the giant fish with bullets. Despite being wounded, the beast is still standing strong and charges at them with a punch. Both of them manage to dodge by jumping back, and they just keep unloading their ammo on the monster. It starts to look like Swiss cheese, full of tiny holes, and it begins to scream, which proves the attacks are working. The big fish then grips its sword even tighter, and a flame erupts all along the blade, turning it into a sword of pure fire. You can see it in the monster's eyes. They're red, filled with rage. It is furious, and it prepares a massive attack aimed at the clone with its flaming sword. The clone actually manages to block the strike with his arm. But that attack was incredibly powerful, and he felt the full, crushing impact. Suddenly, the beast became so much stronger. It starts swinging its sword back and forth, trying to hit the clones like someone just swatting at flies. Sang wonders if the sword is why it got stronger, like it's reacting to its own body. Sang figures the monster's badly hurt, and this is its last desperate power-up. Seizing the moment, his fearless clone strikes at the creature's chest. He lands a hit, but the fish monster just roars and charges forward. It swings with everything it has, landing a direct sword strike. And trust me, you can feel this one right through the stomach. Sang gasps, feeling the same excruciating pain as the sword goes in. The clone grabs the monster's hand, holding that sword in place. Through gritted teeth, Sang admits this was part of the brutal plan. With his other hand, the clone grabs a dagger, ready to strike back. He lets out a primal scream and lunges, stabbing the massive beast. 3 quick stabs right into its chest, using the close range. But the monster isn't just gonna take it, and decides to retaliate. It swings its massive claws, but the clone is running on pure adrenaline. He actually manages to block the attack with just his arm. Fueled by that fire, he presses the assault relentlessly. The giant fish is losing ground, desperately trying to create some distance. It raises its massive foot for a kick and sends it flying. The kick lands square in his chest, shoving him backwards hard. Wounded, he clutches his stomach, just trying to hang on. But the monster's not done and charges with its flaming sword. And just when you think it's over, the other clone dives in to help. Perfect teamwork. Before the monster can react, he lunges forward. He drives his own dagger at the villain. The air is electric. The distance between them is almost nothing. A flurry of blows erupts. But in a brilliant move, both clones manage to strike at the same time. And let me tell you, that synchronized hit was absolutely devastating. The creature feels the full, brutal force of their coordination. Its body, now more whole than monster, finally starts to give out. It drops to its knees with a heavy thud, shaking the ground. And finally, it collapses face first into the dirt, totally defeated. The clones are horribly injured, but they won. They are utterly spent. They can't even stand. One of them just collapses to the ground. He glances at his weapon, empty, no bullets left for the day. That's it for today's hunt. Sang feels so drained he could just die. But then one of the clones spots something on the ground. Footprints made from all the blood splattered absolutely everywhere. His eyes go wide like he's just seen an absolute ghost. And I know what you're thinking, that thing is not dead. Sang orders clone number 2 to follow the tracks immediately. They're heading straight for the entrance to the portal. Outside, a guard stops another hunter, saying a monster appeared. The man complains about wasting his time, but the guard won't budge. It is too dangerous. Juno watches this, thinking Sang needs to hurry. And then he hears it, a strange noise from somewhere nearby. The guards realize something's wrong at the portal and call for backup. And alert the chief. Just then, the monster Sang was fighting bursts out, heading straight for the portal. It's a blur of pure fury, no time for small talk as it barrels towards the exit. It winds up a massive attack aimed right at the guards, who immediately open fire. They're trying desperately to stop the thing from getting any closer, but here's the thing. The bullets just bounce off. It starts to transform its sword as the huge fish monster manages to smash through the portal, swatting aside the guards like they're nothing. But back inside the hunting ground, clone number 2 refuses to let the creature escape. He locks on, readies the weapon in his hand, and prepares for the perfect throw. With all his might, he hurls it directly into the monstrous amphibian's back. And at that exact moment, Sang himself emerges from the portal, knife in hand, lunging at the beast. He channels all of his strength into the charge, closing the distance in an instant. And here it is, the single blow that leaves everyone absolutely speechless. The beast screams in agony, and the soldiers standing by are completely paralyzed. They can't believe the terrifying scene unfolding. Sang focuses all his strength into his arms. Using both hands, he drives the knife in even deeper. The soldiers just stare. They look like they've seen a ghost, with their mouths wide open and eyes bulging. Our hero manages to bring the huge beast crashing down onto its back. With him still on top of it, overcome with emotion, clone number 2 gives a thumbs up. He just can't hold back his tears. Just then, a man with a goatee arrives on the phone. He's wearing a bulletproof vest and says he'll send over a detailed report soon. Right after the investigation, as he slowly approaches the crowd, he notices something completely out of place, a D-rank monster down for the count. It's unconscious, its body covered in serious wounds, the man who just arrived. Recognizes this monster as the Fish Man. A soldier asks if he's from the association. He confirms and immediately asks what happened, still a bit shaken by it all. The soldier explains that a hunter who was inside the portal took the monster down. Right before the lockdown, the confused investigator asks if a D-rank hunter was present. But the soldier just says that a hunter was the one who defeated the beast. Frowning, the man asks what happened. They're still investigating the details. But as far as they know, it was an F-rank hunter and his clones who killed the monster. Now pause for a second. An F-rank, you and I both know that sounds impossible. For an F-rank hunter to take down a D-rank, and all the attacks were concentrated, focused on a single wound, he did all this without any special weapons. While Sang talks with his agent, the man is still trying to figure it all out. Is it even possible to hit a moving target with that kind of deadly precision? He shoots a suspicious look over at our protagonist, but decides for now. He needs to first check if there are any other D-rank monsters left inside the portal. The fish monster's corpse is still there, and its huge eye is still wide open. Approaching the portal, the investigator wonders what he's supposed to tell the association. But while he's stressing, you and I know what comes after a big boss fight: loot time. Sang checks his new skills. One is dash, which greatly increases his movement speed. Another is projectile, which boosts his attack power when he's using a pistol. He's unlocked regeneration and also the strike skill, which channels all his strength into a single devastating blow upon activation. Not only that, his strength, dexterity, and endurance stats have all gone up. As he cleans his wounds, he realizes something. Okay, you and I are back. And our boy is loaded with new skills, wondering if clones number 1 and 2 actually survived thanks to that regeneration skill. The clones are definitely hurt, but Sang figures letting them heal naturally is the best way to help level up his regeneration stat. Junmo praises him for defeating a D-rank monster, and Sang gets a little bashful. The agent says he thinks he could probably take on an E-rank monster solo without any problems. And speaking of which, Sang remembers the monster's short sword and walks over to the beast's corpse, recalling how its sword absorbed the strange red liquid from its body. Sang reaches for the sword, remembering the beast went crazy with red eyes and got way stronger after the sword drank that liquid. But before the boy can even touch it, Juno stops him, saying it's better to have a clone do it because, and don't miss this part, it might be a cursed item. Worried, Sang asks if he can't use cursed items. The agent explains that these things can actually be worth a lot depending on their effects, which gets the boy super excited. He then agrees to let a clone grab it later. In the meantime, the collection team will take the monster's body. He then remembers to ask his agent if another item he took from the beast's head is also valuable. He pulls a strange object from his pocket and shows it to his agent. Junmo's jaw hits the floor, he's that shocked. It's a large red stone, the size of Sang's hand, but unfortunately, it's a low-grade gem. In other words, it's completely worthless. The boy is so hyped that it's hard for Junmo to break the news. And yeah, you and I can both see this heartbreak coming. He explains it's a cheap stat-boosting item, but the side effects for a person are terrible. Poor Sang's dreams of getting rich are instantly crushed, saying goodbye to that payday. But his agent explains that the other items could still be worth a ton, so he shouldn't feel too bad about it. So our protagonist asks him to take care of collecting the items and gives him a quick thanks. Back at Sang's place, home sweet home, he opens the door to find his clones leaning on each other just to walk. They stumble inside, barely processing everything that just happened. He decides to summon number 3, telling the other 2 to rest up. Sang concentrates, activating his skill to summon another clone. And just like that, another Sang appears right in front of him, totally brand new. He hands the clone his gear and tells him to start training. He also changes his own clothes, since they were absolutely filthy. Then he sits on the floor, ready to see what he's really got. A sword and a stat-boosting stone, the 2 items he got himself. He picks up the stone and starts searching on his phone. It's a strength gem. Just as his agent said, it can't be used by a person. And if a summoned being uses it, they turn into a monster. Even though it increases the strength stat by 0.005, that side effect worries our boy. He knows that usually, injuries and stat changes on his clones don't affect him. But he can't shake the feeling that the one who turns into a monster might not be one of them. And in his imagination, he pictures the whole scene. He's got an alligator head and is screaming for his agent. His agent gets so freaked out, he just shoots him right in the head. Total chaos. So he puts the stone back on the floor, deciding not to risk using it for now. He turns his attention back to the new sword he got, remembering his agent's warning. You and I know the rule, let a clone touch it first. It first, just in case it's cursed, and since it's in a box, bringing it was no problem. But he wants to test it out before even thinking about selling it, so he calls for number 2. His clone in the best shape right now, telling him to go grab the sword, obeying his master. The clone walks up to the box, reaches out his arm and grabs the blade. He pulls it out and raises it high. Sang watches, actually pretty impressed. Number 2 is fine. He's still holding the sword, he hasn't exploded, and he hasn't turned into a frog. But he says he can hear a voice. Sang immediately asks if it's coming from the sword. To find out exactly what the clone is hearing, he activates his familiar skill. And trust me, what he hears is horrifying, like a machine gun demanding death and blood. The voice is so loud, so jarring, that the familiar skill instantly deactivates. The boy's ears are ringing from the feedback, but even with all that noise, it doesn't seem to be affecting the clone at all. Sang wonders if it's because he's not holding it. He decides they'll keep it for now, and the clone simply agrees, and just then, a status window pops up. Regeneration has been increased. The protagonist looks over at his resting clones, realizing the sword is boosting their recovery. But he's worried, to get the most out of it, he'd have to take them hunting. And right now they're completely exhausted, so he orders them to meditate and unlock mana breathing. Sang closes his eyes and starts concentrating, getting into a meditative state. He decides tomorrow it's time to head back to campus, and okay, scene change, the next day. We see the college campus where Sang is a student. Everyone's just walking around, living their normal, peaceful lives, and our boy is back to the study routine. He thinks to himself that vacation flew by way too fast this time. Looking at his status screen, he wonders if it's because he was so busy leveling up. And in that short time, he boosted his stats like crazy, thanks to his clones working nonstop. He keeps walking through the college hallways, completely lost in his own thoughts. It hits him that he's kind of a lonely nerd, since not a single person has come up to say hi. But as he walks into his classroom, something immediately catches his eye: his friend Kim Jong-go. He's just sitting at a desk, waiting patiently, at the exact same time they both say it. They can't believe they're in the same class. Kim explains he picked this course. He heard the professor is an easy grader, classic. He then leans in closer and asks if Sang is still working out. Meanwhile, a nearby girl is watching them. She and her friends start whispering, shocked, asking if that's really Sang who used to be so chubby. Suddenly, all the girls in the room are gossiping about our protagonist's glow-up. Some are even thinking about asking him out on a date. Kim just chuckles. He tells Sang he's become popular. Now it all makes sense why no one recognized him. Pointing to his own face, he asks his friend if he's really changed that much. And the big guy says that if Sang saw his own parents, they probably wouldn't recognize him either. He's stunned. He was actually planning on going home soon. Kim adds that even he almost didn't recognize him on the street earlier. He then suggests they go for drinks after class. He says they should call some people, but Sang tells him he already has plans. And you need to see this. The big guy squeals like a little kid. He is absolutely shocked. Our protagonist explains that he's already made a promise, so he can't hang out tonight. Kim shouts loud enough for the whole building to hear, asking if he has plans with a girl. The entire room is now staring at them, completely silent. Turns out his other friends, Chan Woo and Jong Seong, are in the same class too, and Kim is still reeling. He's yelling that he'll always remember this day, even as the professor walks in. Meanwhile, at the World Hunter Association, you and I are about to get some world-ending news. The Oracle has delivered a prophecy of pure disaster, and President Michael Harris needs answers. He's told a massive portal is expected to open sometime soon. And through it, hundreds of monsters ready to pour out and invade. Harris demands to know the when and where. The answer: an A-rank monster invasion. And the location is predicted to be somewhere in South Korea. Elsewhere, a man arrives. Dressed to kill, this is Park Want, owner of the third-ranked guild, here for a meeting. He's immediately greeted with a hard headbutt from a guild master named Mio. Mio accuses him of growing his mustache just to flirt with her. Then she admits she actually finds it pretty appealing. After that, they head inside. Inside the meeting room, we see a guy from the Hyacinth Guild, the same jerk from before. And yeah, he's already picking a fight. Pay attention, this is where the drama starts. He starts trash-talking another guild member about their recent trip to Odin's Tower. He asks if the guy's team just failed to return, or if their results were simply pathetic. A white-haired man tries to defuse the situation, saying this isn't the place. The provoked man is seeing red, but their whole argument gets cut short. An elderly man enters the room, and the entire atmosphere changes instantly. This is the leader of the Korean Hunter Association. Everyone immediately takes their seats. He thanks them for coming and then drops the bombshell about the impending disaster. When asked about the timing, he explains they have no specific details yet. All they know is a rank monsters and a curse hitting somewhere in Korea. One guild member slams his fist down, demanding to know how they can possibly fight this. How can they protect an entire country with so little information? The association leader calmly says that's exactly why this meeting was called. The attendees are worried, pointing out they barely have enough hunters for regular work. Guarding the whole country is pretty much an impossible task. But then one man raises his hand and proposes a plan. He suggests each guild forms a group to guard a specific region. If an incident happens, all groups will converge on that one location, no exceptions. And he adds that any guild that fails to cooperate will face severe punishment. The leader asks if anyone disagrees, and the plan is met with total agreement. After leaving his college, Sang sees a female student being cornered by some guy. The man is being pushy, demanding her number and complimenting her looks. Her response, she just tells the guy he's ugly, then she spots Sang. Thinking fast, she pretends he's her boyfriend to get away from the creep. She clings to Sang's arm, and they walk away from the area together. The student quickly explains that the guy had been bothering her for a while. That's why she pretended they were a couple, and clarifies she doesn't have a boyfriend. Sang notices her clothes and asks why she's not in her school uniform. She tells him it's her birthday, then asks him why he's staring. That's when it dawns on Sang. He's her teacher, so he already has her number. At that exact moment, Sang gets a notification. Another 50 million won just hit his account. And with a new plan, you and I watch him invite her to eat whatever she wants. Sang takes her to a restaurant that serves nothing but premium steak and seeing the prices. So Sang's treating his student, but let me tell you, she's already worried about the bill. He just tells her not to stress, claims his boss is paying, and orders another round. But while they're eating, an emergency warning flashes across a TV screen. The broadcast announces a monster portal breach is happening in South Korea. And yeah, it's confirmed to be in their region. Elsewhere, his college friends are bummed he ditched their party. They figure he's probably out on a date, and then they spot him. Sang looks like he's in an amazing mood, and then everyone's phone buzzes. A disaster alert. Sang runs into his friends, who immediately start questioning him. They accuse him of skipping out on them to hang out with his girlfriend. The girl with Sang gets visibly flustered by the whole accusation. But Sang quickly clarifies she isn't his girlfriend, she's his student. He explains he was just buying her a meal to thank her for some earlier help. After that, he introduces everybody. One of his friends, Daladal, even gives her a gift. Some meat, telling her to go share it with her parents. She thanks him for it. Now pay attention to this. Sang's other friends are just watching this all unfold. Totally impressed by how smooth he is, the student seems surprised their time is over. Sang explains that with the disaster alert going off, her parents are going to be worried. His friends suggest they all hang out a bit longer, but Sang is firm. He insists that everyone needs to head home immediately and stay safe. They all agree with him and head their separate ways. As Sang leaves, he sees people coming out of a bar, laughing and drinking. And for a second, he wonders if he's the one who's overreacting to the alert. Right then, he gets a call from a man named Genmo, who asks about the alert. Sang confirms he got it and asks for the full story. Genmo reveals the alert is expected to last for 3 months because nobody knows where the monsters will show up. He adds that the creatures they're expecting are extremely dangerous. We're talking rank monsters, maybe even stronger, an appearance in the capital. That would mean an insane number of casualties. So Sang asks the obvious question, if the threat is that bad, why isn't the warning more serious? Genmo explains the government can't just shut down the entire national economy. For 3 whole months, the country would completely collapse. Hearing that, Sang instantly understands what's really going on here. This vague announcement is just a tactic by the Hunter Association to dodge all responsibility. That way, if a tragedy happens, they can just claim they issued a warning. Genmo tells Sang to head for a shelter, since the hunting fields are temporarily closed. After the call, Sang immediately checks in on the status of his clones. Clone 1 reports back that it's totally fine. Clone 2 is heavily damaged but not destroyed. Noticing his skill cooldown is done, Sang decides it's time to resummon number 1. He dismisses the old clone and summons a brand new one to take its place. Sang then makes his way over to his parents' house, opening the door and announcing he's home. And this is where it hits you. His own mother doesn't even recognize him. He has to tell her his name, Sang Woo, before she finally realizes who he is. Even his father has to squint and take a closer look to confirm it's his son. Shortly after, his sister, Kaoyuang-du, appears, complaining he should have greeted her first. At first, Sang didn't recognize her either. But his mother invited him inside, only to ask about the masked people following him. You see, Sang explains they aren't his friends, they're his clones. And with that, Sang and his identical copies walk into his family home, confirming for everyone that his awakened ability is cloning, something he unlocked a month ago. His mom is in complete shock, saying she never imagined her son would become a hunter, while his sister is absolutely buzzing with excitement. His father, though, just calmly notes that there's a hunter in the family now. Sang tells them he didn't want to hide his new powers anymore. But his mother cuts in, terrified, warning him about how dangerous his new job is. To calm her down, Sang explains that his clones are the ones who handle all the fighting. He makes it clear that he's never in any real danger, telling her not to worry. After that, Sang tells his family they need to get ready to evacuate, right now. He warns them a disaster is unfolding as they speak, and they need to head for the closest shelter. But his father, he's not buying the urgency of it all. He questions why this disaster is happening so suddenly, even complaining that he still has to go to work. The next day, it hits Sang. His family has no idea how serious this is, and you and I both know that's a bad sign. Their calm attitude makes it clear they think it's just a small incident, maybe a few monsters at most. Since they still need to pack, Sang decides to stay home with them for the day, lying that he got a message saying his classes were canceled. Later on, the family starts making dinner with some meat Sang brought home. A relative asks if his friends, meaning the clones, will be eating too. Sang replies that the clones only get rice, explaining that the good meat shouldn't be wasted on them. And so, the clones are served buckets of plain rice, while the family gets ready to dig into some steak. During the meal, his sister jokes, asking if he'll get fat again now that 4 of him are eating. He shakes his head no, explaining that he burns a massive amount of energy now. The family enjoys their dinner, saying it's been ages since they all got together like this. Then an explosion rocks the entire building. The sheer force of the blast throws Sang across the room. When he finally opens his eyes, he sees their building has been completely torn apart. And outside, massive monsters are swarming the area. A colossal dragon-like creature appears, and let me tell you, things just went from bad to apocalyptic. The monster starts gathering energy, glowing with intense heat before unleashing a devastating beam that vaporizes everything. Sang looks back to see his entire family knocked unconscious on the floor. He spots the scattered gear of his number one clone and realizes it must have sacrificed itself to shield everyone from the blast. Amid the rubble, he sees clones number 2 and number 3. The latter is missing an arm. So now Sang is left with one clone heavily damaged and another missing a limb. He yells to his father that a portal has opened. That's the source of all this chaos. The city streets are a vision of pure destruction. A huge green monster holds a person in its grip, ready to eat them, while other civilians lie crushed under cars. And you and I just saw their world turn into an absolute nightmare. Stick with me, we're dropping right into chaos. Sang packs a bag, putting armor on his sister, who asks if his one-armed clone is doing all right. Sang says it's fine, just as another massive explosion rocks the building. A monster slams into the ground nearby. It becomes terrifyingly clear that a portal is open in the sky, literally raining beasts down on the city. Sang was lucky he was on one of the few floors that hadn't already collapsed. He takes out the fallen monster, his mana instantly refilling. He tries to open a nearby door, but it's jammed solid. Sang tells his dad he's going to force it open, grabbing a huge chunk of debris and channeling his power. He combines his strike ability with a kick, completely shattering the blockage. Downstairs is a war zone. Bodies, wrecked vehicles, and dead monsters are scattered everywhere. Sang immediately asks his father about the distance to the nearest shelter. His father tells him it's 2 kilometers away, but points out the swarms of monsters in their path. Slimes, skeletons, and even massive stone golems are blocking the way. But his sister knows a shortcut. An underground tunnel that should be a much safer route. They start to move. But then they hear a man screaming for help. He's trapped under rubble. And you and I see the problem. A D-rank troll is standing right over him. Sang's father warns him to be rational. They are in no position to help anyone. Their own survival has to come first, but Sang is conflicted, wanting to save the man. The problem is his injured clone, number 3, is unfit for combat. That leaves only number 2 to protect his family. He can't risk it. But the man remains trapped, crying out for his mother. Sang's heart is pounding in his chest as his own mother begs him to leave. He tells them to go downstairs and lock the door, assuring them that number 3 will provide more than enough protection. But he also states that number 2 is coming with him. His sister screams, calling him insane and accusing him of gambling with the family's safety. Sang just replies he's a hunter. And this, right here, is why we watch. A hunter never retreats from a threat. He grabs a nearby pipe and charges straight for the troll, striking it in the eye. He orders number 2 to get the injured man to safety, explaining that their job is simple. Hunters kill monsters. He lets out a defiant shout at the troll. Strangely, another monster watching from a distance mimics his words. It's intelligent. As the fight rages on, number 2 works to free the trapped man, pulling away the heavy stones. He asks if the man can walk, and he replies that he can, just amazed that he managed to survive the whole ordeal. Facing the massive troll, Sang orders number 2 to grab a weapon. He then tosses an item called the Devil's Rock to his clone and tells him to eat it. After swallowing the rock, number 2 instantly transforms into a red demonic creature. Now get this, it's wielding a sword. Sang asks the transformed clone if he is still an ally, and the demon confirms that he is. The giant troll looks completely confused by the sudden transformation. At the same time, Sang feels a massive increase in his own strength stat, with absolutely no side effects. He prepares to face the troll by himself. The creature drags its huge mace along the ground before throwing a boulder, which Sang easily dodges. Then it attacks with its giant club. And check this out, one swing badly injures the clone. As the troll lunges again, Sang charges straight in, realizing it's slower than that last monster he fought. He lands a solid hit right on the troll's face, but the monster's hand just grows back and blocks the attack. The troll smacks Sang hard, sending him flying. Sang realizes that regeneration is the real problem here and orders his second clone to go for the legs. The clone zips in, slicing a deep gash into the troll's leg muscle, forcing the beast down to one knee. Sang sees his opening and stabs both of its eyes with perfect precision. The clone hits the other leg to keep the troll immobilized. The creature crashes to the ground, twisted and crying out in what sounds like fear. Sang leans in, trying to understand, but then he accidentally triggers his strike skill, slamming it right into the monster's skull. After that massive hit, Sang and his clones are completely wiped out. A system window pops up. It shows a huge stat boost, but there's a catch, a massive one. The recoil from the skill nearly destroyed his hand. Still, Sang forces himself up and says it's time to find his sister. But then he realizes his phone is missing and asks his second clone to give it back. Suddenly, another explosion rocks the city. More monsters are coming. The entire scene just erupts into total chaos. Spaceships fly overhead, armies arrive, and yeah, a giant Godzilla-like monster is tearing the city apart. This is where it gets absolutely insane. Projectiles identified as Rank 9 magic from the Red Flame Guild slam into the creature's head. Motivated hunters swarm the scene, including one confident-looking guy named Magner. They've all arrived to join this massive battle. A voice from a ship announces their arrival on the scene. A hatch opens, and out steps Park Hwan-ta, the leader of one of the top 3 guilds. Down on the ground, a tank aims its heavy weapons. A man runs up to the newly arrived group, screaming that the giant creature is getting away and that way too many hunters are already focused on it. He suggests they find a different target. The battlefield is a nightmare, littered with piles of bodies and fallen warriors in golden armor. And you and I both know. In this kind of chaos, some people are celebrating while others are weeping. One guy is even seen grinning from ear to ear, even though he just lost his partner. Yeah, the story points out he's a complete scumbag. A group of survivors is found, completely surrounded by a vicious gang. Sang and his squad are revealed to be their protectors. Watching from a distance, Park Hwan-ta is impressed that Sang is holding his ground. But he knows that with only 2 clones for support, Sang can't possibly win this on his own. He tells his team to head north and get ready to rescue them. A team member activates a winged device and they move in, well aware that Sang is in a really bad spot. After taking down another huge monster, Sang is left completely exhausted. He sees a mother and her daughter nearby and yells for the civilians to head to the underground shelter while he stays behind. The crowd protests, screaming at him that he's going to die if he stays. Sang just tells his second clone to cover the rear while he escorts the people himself. As they move, goblins ambush them and Sang leaps in to save a man. The fight is tough. He's low on energy from that previous powerful attack, and he can't even use his skills properly. And then a huge flock of black bird-like monsters appears. Sang dodges a projectile of fire or smoke launched by one of the creatures. The attack barrels toward the civilians, but Sang orders his clone to use its own body as a shield. Trust me, this is pure sacrifice. But before the monster attacks again, another creature, a massive tiger, slams down and crushes it. Completely drained, Sang collapses. When he wakes up, he sees a man standing before him. The man casually flicks his sword, and a monster's head nearby just rolls onto the ground. He's Pardarda, a powerful guild leader. The man asks if everyone is all right, but Sang can only ask who he is. Meanwhile, in the underground shelter, Sang's sister announces she's going out to find him. His third clone blocks her path, stating it has no orders to let her leave. She tries to force her way through, but the clone is unmovable. Her parents plead with her to stop, but she insists that something is wrong since Sang hasn't come back yet. Her father then reveals he knew Sang was a hunter, and that now they all have to trust him. Suddenly, someone starts banging on the shelter door, crying out desperately for help. The people inside hesitate to open it. There's a passcode only residents are supposed to know. But Sang's sister thinks it could be someone Sang sent with a message, so she opens the door. Now watch closely, this is a fatal mistake. An injured person, clearly under enemy control, stumbles inside. This isn't a survivor, it's a screaming firefly, a Class B monster. The shelter explodes into chaos as everyone runs. Sang's sister is cornered, face to face with the creature. And the third clone, even with its missing arm, moves to protect her. It lunges forward to stab the monster in the head. But the attack is useless, and the clone is impaled. The monster's strike pierces straight through the clone and into Sang's sister as well. Just let that sink in. Their parents watch in horror as their daughter collapses onto the floor. But Clone 3 grabs a weapon, activating the emergency ceiling sprinklers. It then kicks the monster outside and locks the door, sacrificing itself to save everyone else. Back outside, Park Won-ta approaches Sang, apologizing for being late and offering a hand to help him up. Sang recognizes Park Won-ta by name, and he's stunned by the man's immense power. Sang introduces himself and thanks the man for saving him. In return, Park Won-ta thanks Sang for saving so many of the civilians. All the survivors start praising Sang for his bravery, but he modestly brushes it off. Park Won-ta tells Sang to calm down, mentioning he saw Sang just vanish as he arrived. He's curious about Sang's true identity and the source of his power. He then asks Sang if he's a hunter. Sang confirms it, but admits that he's still basically a rookie. Park Won-ta then asks him to reveal his special ability. Sang hesitates, unwilling to share that information, but he owes this man his life. Just as he's about to speak, he feels the mental connection to his clone, number 3, suddenly shatter. And right there, everything changes. Sang snatches a sword from the ground. He screams that his family is in danger and takes off in their direction. Park Won-ta understands immediately that this is urgent. He tells the rescue team to stay behind and get the survivors to safety. As Sang runs at full speed, the demon sword he's holding starts whispering dark commands to him, telling him to kill. He struggles to keep his sanity while pushing his dash ability to the max. Elsewhere, a man with a mustache loads up a fire bullet and fires it at a massive monster, but the attack doesn't even faze it. Other hunters, all right, let's dive in where the hunters are trying to focus their magic on a single point. But even their combined power is completely useless against this creature's body. A hunter with a poison-laced sword finds he can't even begin to scratch the monster's hide. The group is finally starting to understand they have to cooperate to win this thing. Just then, a new face arrives on the scene and scoffs at the very idea of teamwork. The other hunters demand to know who he is, and he just tells them he's only here for the cash prize. He declares that for someone with his kind of power, cooperation is for the weak. As he says it, he unleashes a devastating attack that looks like a literal shower of meteors. Now pay attention, because inside the shelter, Sang's father is desperately trying to stop his daughter's bleeding, screaming for an ambulance or literally any kind of medical help. Sang's mother is falling apart as the girl's condition gets more and more critical. Suddenly, a spark flashes at the shelter door, and Sang's father sees that something has just burned its way right through the seal. A small monster has gotten into the room, lying wounded on the floor, and his daughter screams at him to run. The cursed firefly monster then begins to speak through the little girl, using her voice to beg not to die. The parents are frozen in terror as another person arrives on the scene. It's Sang. He and his father lock eyes. To his dad, Sang looks completely different, like he's been possessed. The sight of his injured sister on the floor causes Sang's brief moment of calm to shatter into pure rage. I know what you're thinking, it's payback time. He dashes forward and slashes at the monster, successfully slicing off one of its arms. But he gets struck in the exchange. Sang writhes in pain, while the monster seems to be enjoying his suffering. Just as it happened in their last encounter, the sword makes its wielder more unstable the more blood it's exposed to. Before the fight can resume, the monster, which has dozens of legs, closes the distance and gets right in Sang's face. Suddenly, a colleague intervenes, saving Sang from the immediate threat. Another man named Want also arrives on the scene. While the monster is still there, Sang collapses into Want's arms. Want executes a flying kick that sends the creature flying a huge distance away. The female colleague who first helped Sang shouts that his injuries are severe. It's then that they see. Sang is missing an arm and is tipping into a berserker state. The woman attempts a mana transfer, but Sang's condition is spiraling out of control. Want asks how he is, and the woman replies that he is not doing well at all. She screams at Want to kill the monster immediately. Sang, who is in critical condition, barely manages to speak. He mentions his sister, pointing to her location, and tells his colleagues to save her instead of him. Want reassures Sang that both he and his sister are going to survive. He tells Sang to just rest, promising that this whole situation is about to be resolved. Shortly after, Sang loses consciousness. Meanwhile, at the Hunter Association, the situation is pure chaos, and many are demanding a full-scale evacuation. The leader of the top-ranked guild arrives for a meeting just before an official disaster announcement can be made. This guild leader argues against making the situation public, stating that it would cause a complete citywide shutdown. He warns that since the exact timing of the disaster is unknown, a premature announcement would have severe economic consequences. And that's where we leave it. Trust me, you're going to want to see what happens next. And you know this would have consequences the whole country would blame the association for. The association's leader asks what the guild master is proposing. The man suggests they just keep everyone in the dark about the monsters, his logic. It shifts all the blame onto any person who chooses not to evacuate. But the association leader pushes back, pointing out that move would get tons of people killed. The guild leader just smirks, saying he sees those casualties as a good thing. He adds that anyone who hasn't awakened or is below D rank is basically useless anyway. Then he puts a hand on the association leader's shoulder. A clear message that this wasn't a request, it was an order. The scene cuts. We see Sang and his clones, while they're all training like mad, Sang himself. He's just kicking back, eating snacks. A guy named Junmo contacts him, telling him not to rely on his clones for everything. Now watch this part closely. Junmo warns him he's just wasting his insane potential to be a top-tier hunter. But Sang just brushes it off, saying everything is totally fine. He doesn't want to be a hero. All he cares about is making money. Hearing that, Junmo's entire expression changes. He asks Sang if that greed for cash is really the reason he's in this mess. Is that single goal really enough for him? Then, Sang falls into a dream. He sees his family, all of them gone. He even sees his sister, who's begging him, pleading with him to save her. He jolts awake from the nightmare. He's completely wiped out, and Y's at his bedside, asking about the bad dream. He tells Sang not to move too much. Sang admits everything hurts. Y relays what the doctor said, explaining that Sang's condition is bad. The wound was deep, insanely deep. He's just lucky he survived at all. Sang tries to thank him, but Y just waves it off, saying they need to talk later. Just then, Sang's parents burst into the room, looking absolutely frantic. They're in total distress, desperately asking if they've lost their daughter. A doctor reports that Sang's surgery went well, but he'll need to be monitored closely while he recovers. Sang finds out 4 whole days have passed. 4 days since the portal opened. All the major monsters are gone now, with only a few low-level stragglers left behind. Sang says he remembers nothing. Nothing at all before he passed out. Then he asks where his sister is. He asks how she's doing, but no one will answer him. Everyone just looks down. The silence is deafening. Sang presses them again, asking why no one is talking. He asks if his sister is in a hospital bed too. The doctor finally speaks. Her wound was treated, but she was infected by a mana virus from the monster. This kind of virus just drains a person's life force away. In most cases, it's harmless. The virus dies if it hits an incompatible mana signature. But in those 1 in a million cases, a person's mana is a perfect match for the virus. And if that happens, they can't live a normal life ever again. Sang asks how to cure it. The doctor tells him the awful truth: there is no cure. The only slim chances are getting treated by a legendary S-class healer named Bless, or finding a specific healing item from the other side of the portal.